Yo, what's going on, guys? Hopefully, you guys are having a great weekend, man, and just a great start to your guys' Monday. Look, there's a whole lot of good news that happened over a couple of period of days, a couple of timelines of the hours as well. Look, Rafael Espinoza, congratulations, man. That was an amazing fight versus Robeisy Ramirez. He showed a tons of heart and resiliency. For those that didn't see it, this fight is up there with Fight of the Year alongside Luis Neri and Azat, and up there with Sergey Darenchenko and Jaime Munguia. This was a fantastic fucking fight, man. Fantastic fight. And hopefully you guys had an opportunity to watch it. Probably the majority of the people were watching Regis versus Devin Haney. But congratulations to everybody, man. Everybody. Because the fans, along with the fighters, they showed out and gave the fans a great time over the weekend. Big news, right? The Lakers ended up winning the in-season tournament. LeBron was MVP. Man, at the age of 40, the dude's still balling out. I'm a little under the weather, so just bear with me. I got a lot of phlegm, a lot of mucus, so I'll be getting a lot of loogies in my throat, and it's hard for me to breathe. Shohei Ohtani goes to the Dodgers. I'm a Giants fan, so I'm a little bitter, but I'm also just a proud Californian. So I got to see my Giants win 3 World Series in 6 years. So I'm happy. You know what I mean? At least now, hopefully the Giants can make some good moves to counteract and compete versus the Dodgers. So I'm expecting the Giants to have a couple of big signings since we lost on Aaron Judge last year and Shohei Ohtani. I was a little bitter. I wish he would have gone to a different team, but I feel like it was either between the Yankees or the Dodgers. Excuse me. And then Robeisy Ramirez against Rafael Espinoza. And the San Francisco 49ers are in first place. You got to enjoy the little small victories in life, man. Like I said, 2023 has been a fantastic year, and it could only get really better. Now, with that being said, I want to first start out by saying I hope you guys are appreciating the art of building a fighter. And instead of hating on Bill Haney and Devin Haney, just appreciate, all right? Because you could get blinded by your hatred, by the embodiment and the art of building and molding a prince into a king, right? From a contender to a legendary champion, and young as well. I'm not saying Devin Haney is the greatest shit since sliced bread, but what I am saying is this: there are much more talented fighters than Devin Haney. There are much stronger punchers than Devin Haney, much faster punchers as well, right? That are quicker than him. Devin Haney does everything excellent, from footwork to punch selection to hand speed to jab. He does everything essentially perfect. He's not the biggest puncher, but he doesn't have to be. He's not the fastest puncher, nor does he have to be, right? Fighters like Tank Davis hit much harder than him, right? But at least Devin is chasing a legacy. Sure, he wants to make the biggest fights happen, right? Against the big popular names as well, but he's still chasing a legacy. And everything that we wanted, Ruben Guerrero, Angel Garcia, even Floyd Mayweather Sr., to be a great representative of their children, right? That is what Bill Haney has done for Devin Haney, right? And what Teofimo Sr. has been to T.O. Jr., right? And some be like, oh man, you got to separate from your father. You can't say the same with Bill Haney. Bill Haney is a great father for Devin. And for those that, again, if you're just paying attention and listening and seeing the art of matchmaking and the art of fatherhood, Bill Haney is doing a great job, teaching his son, Devin, not just in life, in business, but keeping him on track. And credit to Devin Haney for being very studious and listening to his elders, all right? Listening to his father and soaking in the wisdom. He's chasing legacy. Now, I'm not surprised that he beat Regis Rougarou because Regis, he's just a puncher. That's all he is. The first time I ever saw Regis was against Joe Diaz Jr. right here. And from the get-go, you can see he gets hit with punches. And boxing, you're gonna get hit, right? But Regis never changed his style of fighting. He never incorporated a bounce to his step. He never really punched with people. It was either a give or take. He was either gonna receive punches, block them, or he was gonna punch you. He never punched with you. And when you're fighting a guy who's taller, rangier, faster, lengthier, sharp, like Devin Haney, you're not going to beat him in the way that he fought him on Saturday. You have to punch with him. If he throws a jab, you shoot your two, and then you double up your punches. Regis never did that, man. All right? And he's not a cerebral fighter. He's a good fighter, but he's not a great fighter. Let me catch my breath really quick. Like I said, it's kind of hard for me to breathe. Excuse me. Hey, man, salute to you, Vince. Thank you for tuning in. Fight of the year. Espinoza beating Ramirez. Glad I watched that one live. Amazing fight. Incredible performance and heart. Vince also says, hell yeah, watched it live. I was shocked the judges gave him the win. Good for boxing. I agree, man. There was like 10 minutes of delay that we just had to wait until the judges finally announced their scorecards. I thought they were going to give it the royal fuckery to Rafael Espinoza, and I'm glad that they didn't. I'm glad that the judges got it right, and now Rafael Espinoza can walk around his pueblo and be called a champion. It's a fantastic thing when boxing does the right thing. What's going on, Warp Speed? Hopefully you join very soon. He goes, at Vince Vargas, the underdog and upset of the year. Live long and prosper. Vince replies, when the ring announcers say, and the new, I was shocked because I thought the hometown guy was going to get it. Man, you and the rest of the world thought as well. Warp Speed responds to the household was jumping in joy from the victory. Ramirez is a great man and has a heck of a backstory. Still, this is why we watch, for the surprises. Vince comments, Espinoza full of emotion. That's what boxing is all about. Underdog with heart and will. Fight of the year because I seen it. Ha ha! Yeah, man, it reminds me when the Russian fighter, Ruslan Provodnikov, won a fight. I think it was against Mike Alvarado. And he goes, Mama! Mama! Oh, man. The scream of glory and joy. Vince also says, when Espinoza got knocked down in the 5th, I thought it was going to be over. Like, there goes the momentum. But Espinoza kept with the plan and got him in the 12th. Yeah, man, he was put on spaghetti legs. And he, I thought the ref, if there was ever an opportunity to stop that fight, it could have stopped it right there because he kept losing his balance and he needed the ropes to hang him on. I'm surprised that they didn't. But I'm glad that they didn't because we ended up getting the next 7 rounds of epicness. Look, man, I can't wait for them to run it back. Robespierre Ramirez, he said something amongst the lines that the 126-pound division is a very tough division. Any given time, a champion can lose those fights because it's that competitive and the margin of error because everyone is within the top 25. They're all really close-knit. Maybe there's El Venado Lopez that might be taking the forefront and looking to be the best at that weight class. But yeah, man, it's good, man. I can't wait to see what happens with next. Even that one fighter, Nick Ball from the UK, when he beat Isaac Dogboe, there's a whole lot of excitement, a whole lot of things that are going on. Look, man, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, just tailoring back a little bit with Devin Haney. Hopefully you guys will just pay attention and appreciate when a young man listens to his father. That's one of the greatest things that I take away from the Devin Haney story and the legacy, is because when you were 20 years old, 25 years old, you know what I mean? You might have been undisciplined. You might have not listened to your parents. You wanted to do your own thing. When it could be something small like, man, your parents want you to go to school and become a doctor or some shit like that. And you decided, no, I'm just going to I'm just going to start working, and you never stick to the plan. How many times have you deviated from your plan, right? Look at all these people in New Year's resolution. Oh, I'm going to lose weight. And then you can't even be consistent for a year, right? Well, Devin Haney's been doing it for 25 years and people still want to shit on him. No, that he's a weight bully and he's all this. Look, man, he's never missed weight. He's never missed weight. He's not fighting in catch weights. He's not asking people to move up in weight to fight him like Ryan Garcia did to Oscar Duarte and then fought at 143 pounds, right? He's not missing weight like David Benavidez. He's not asking fighters like Canelo, like Amir Khan to move up and fight at 155. Those are weight bullies, guys. Devin has done neither of those things, right? And for people saying, oh, he's big at 140. In what fucking way is he big at 140? Just because he has wide back and wide shoulders does not mean he's big for that weight class. He also has very skinny legs. Okay? So a lot of people, they don't even, man, they just be talking out the side of the neck because they don't understand what the fuck is a weight bully. A weight bully is Jermaine Ortiz. When he cuts like 30 pounds and he's falling down on the ground and can't even make weight and he's injuring his body. So when he fights, he's very depleted. That's a weight bully, man. Look, when I used to box in my first amateur fight, it's also my last amateur fight, I would walk around maybe 150, right? And the coach wanted me to fight at 126 pounds. Okay. I hadn't weighed 126 pounds since probably 8th grade. I'm 22 at the time. Okay. That's like 7 years in the past, right? When I tell you, when I made weight, my brother was there. I bought a Subway sandwich. My stomach was filled with one bite. All right. I got a meatball marinara or a chicken teriyaki. And my stomach was filled after one bite. I bought like a 2-liter lemon lime Gatorade. I only drank maybe like 2 or 3 sips and I could not drink anymore. My stomach had shrunk. You saw Devin Haney when he would weigh in versus Lomachenko at 135 or George Kambosos, he looked like a jackal. Yeah, my stomach looked fucking tiny. I basically had no abs. It was just like, I mean, I was cut, but I was like, you can see my hip bones like crazy. When I tried to rehydrate, I couldn't. I only rehydrated like 2 pounds to 128. All I was extremely tired. In sparring, I would fight guys like 20 pounds and I was beating these dudes. But when I fought, I'm like, man, I was just fighting off heart because I couldn't really think, man. There was nothing to think. So when these fighters cut all that weight, like Devin Haney, they lose their sharpness. They're not at their best. At 140, Devin Haney looks pretty fucking good, right? At 147, he might look even better. Devin is barely getting into his man strength. And the more that he sucks up or sucks down in weight, the worse it's going to be for him to never really show us his man strength. Once he starts just being natural in his natural weight classes, he's going to do a great job. He's going to be even better. He's going to be even faster and stronger. The reason I bring these topics up is because he wants to fight at 147, or those are rumors. Some people that have been mentioned, excuse me, are fighters like Mario Barrios and Keith Thurman. Okay, those are great fights for Devin Haney at 147. But to be honest with you, I don't want to see Devin at 147. I want him to stay at 140 and fight great fights. I want him to fight and unify the division against Subriel Matias, against Teofimo Lopez. I'm not really interested in him fighting Leon Paro, right? Leon Paro is okay. He's a decent little fighter. Beating Montana Love, I mean, I don't think highly of Montana Love. Montana Love is okay. Mm, He's okay. Like, I'd rather see Leon Paul versus Steve Spark, Leon Paul versus Sander Martin. I want to see Devin Haney unify the division. Hopefully, it's not against Rolly, because I refuse to call Rolly Romero a champion. I'm not going to call that dude a champion. Okay. When I see fighters like Devin Haney take on tough challenges like Regis Prograis and beat them properly, and when I see Teofimo take on hard fights like Josh Taylor and Sander Martin, real challenges, and beat them, and those are champions. Whatever Rolly Romero is, that's not a champion, man. I'm not going to call him a champion. But anyway, when Devin and Tio are doing the proper ways to become a champion, then there's fuckboys like Rolly Romero that walk around this earth like they are a champion, and then still get the privileges of, I mean, look, no disrespect to people getting their money anyway, anyhow, but also it's like, can't do it like the corrupted way or the proper way. Like, you got to do the fucking right thing. And Rolly Romero is not the right thing. That dude says some of the most, like, he's an unscrupulous human being. But whatever. Vince Vargas goes, wow, shout out to Subway. I like those sandwiches. Man, your stomach shrunk. Never to this day am I ever gonna experience that, bro. It was horrible, man. It was horrible. It was a horrible feeling. My arms were they were super thin. I didn't really even have shoulders, man. When I tell you back in high school, I used to squat like 300 pounds and bench like 185, walking around 155 pounds. I could do neither when I cut that much weight. And but I couldn't. I didn't even train for a month. I told coach, look, man, I cut all this weight. Do not pull me out of this fight. I know I haven't been training for a month. I was barely studying at the university at CSUMB, so I had to. It was my first semester about transferring over to there, and I didn't want to, miss school because I was, I wanted to get acclimated. But at the same time, boxing had to suffer a little bit, because I was just doing it for an activity. And, but yeah, coach stuck with me, and shit, to this day, I thought I lost that fight, but, the judges saw it otherwise, man. So I'm crossing my fingers for that. It was good stuff. Yo, Speed, you got to take over, man. I'm kind of losing my voice. It's not easy. My
Hold, hold me, Ricky. Hold me, Ricky. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, bro.
Well, well, you know what? I hopped on as soon as I could on this live, homie Ricky, because I'm very excited about this live. I am very excited because of what just transpired over the weekend. And I unfortunately understand that you are under the weather and that you're likely not going to be participating in this live as much as I would hope, because I did want to pick your brain and a couple of issues, a couple of topics. But I guess I'm just going to have to fill in that vacancy and your lack of participation by trying to instruct our listeners, our beloved listeners, like Mr. Vince Vargas, and anybody else that decides to hop on today. We decided to have a particularly early live because we have had a couple of requests and commenters saying they would want us to hop on a little earlier. So, I convinced the homie Ricky to do this. But I would do my best, homie Ricky, to fill in that void that your lack of participation will create. So let's see how well I do. I would encourage you, though, homie Ricky, to drink a warm chamomile tea, throw in some honey in there, make sure that it is nicely sweetened by the bee's knees, because I do want to occasionally chat with you and get your opinion and answers on a couple of things that I would like to bring up on this live. But just to try to bring it back to what you started, which is basically you did touch on a lot of very interesting things in this introduction, and I apologize that I am having to interject my personal opinions on this beloved sport of ours and the news that we'll report today. Not having given the homie Ricky enough time to cook because the homie Ricky's already hopping out of this live 20 minutes into it, and I am a particular fond listener of his introductions because I really do believe that there is nobody on the YouTube channels discussing boxing with the kind of original takes, especially in the introduction of the lives that the homie Ricky presents. That's why I like to let him cook for as much as I can before I decide to hop on. He asked me to hop on a little early, so I will indulge him with that. But I will say for any of our listeners out there that do not catch the lives from the beginning, I encourage you to go back and listen in because this guy is particularly adept and intelligent, and he makes some very persuasive and interesting uh, arguments before we actually get down to the body of our lives. Now, the homie Ricky ended his introduction by basically personalizing it and describing to you how weight cutting affected his performance when he was an amateur boxer. And he did address a couple of the fighters that I did want to talk about in this life, which includes Liam Paro, Montana Love, Devin Haney. And I'm gonna wrap it all up in one nice present for you all, almost like if it's an early Christmas gift. And I will take that one fight that the homie Ricky is discussing, his amateur fight, and make that the thing that unites all of these three fighters. If you don't know anything about the homie Ricky, one thing you have to know about the homie Ricky is this: he can likely beat you up in the ring. That's a matter of fact. The homie Ricky is a very capable fighter. He's a very intelligent pugilist. And in fact, I may have talked about this before, but the homie Ricky is what you would call a polymath, an individual that teaches himself what to do. And the homie Ricky decided to train himself in being an amateur boxer. And the homie Ricky, if I'm not mistaken, started boxing quite late, like he just mentioned. Likely in his 22s is when he decided to, after being a full time employee and a full time student at a local university, which is 8 hours at a job, 8 hours or 5, 6 units of classes, whatever that means, he decided to still take up boxing. So you got to understand, there's 24 hours in a day, and this guy was working eight, doing eight as a student or so, five maybe in a short day or whatever, and every other time he was going to the gym to pound out. And this guy, he taught himself how to fight solely by watching footage on other fighters. The homie Ricky is incredible. The homie Ricky can fight like Pacquiao. It's hilarious. He takes up his style, he throws the same kind of punches. It looks like he's imitating the guy, like he's miming him, like a comedian. But he does that, and you know he means it seriously. When he wants to take on Mayweather, his persona, he fights like Mayweather. When he wants to be a Spence, he'll do a Spence, and so forth and so on. If he wants to do a Lomachenko, he will do a Lomachenko. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that the homie Ricky is very good at assuming fighting styles and employing them in the ring. The homie Ricky taught himself how to box in all of these different styles, and he's intelligent in the ring, so that whenever there was any challenges presented to him in sparring and whatnot, he would basically learn, see what was working, see what was not, and then he switch it up and then switch it up on this opponent. And next thing you know, the opponent was being outclassed because guess what? There was another problem presented to him by the homie Ricky that just gave him another different angle, another different look, and the guy was unable to capitalize or learn on the fly. So then homie Ricky capitalized on that um, lack of preparation, and the homie Ricky almost always got the best of all of his foes in sparring. Long story short, the homie Ricky, in about 6 months to 8 months or so, he got the trust of his coach in the Salinas Rock Boxing Gym, and he got the keys handed to him so that he can walk in and out of the gym whenever he pleased, with the only condition, which was the following.
Yo. What are we dropping addresses now, bro? What are you doing, man? What are you
Don't worry
doing?
about it. Don't worry about it. Okay,
What are you doing?
what the homie Ricky's conditions were is the following: he had to spar every single person that came into town. Now, it didn't matter if the guy was 10 pounds lighter, 40 pounds heavier. The homie Ricky's job was to bring those guys to heat. And I'll tell you one thing: he stood his ground and he always did excellent. So when I tell you that the homie Ricky can likely beat you up, maybe I'm exaggerating. I don't know what your experience is, but I know that homie Ricky is brave. He knows every style, and he's gonna give you challenges. So homie Ricky was focusing on one side of the sport, which is a very trying, very hard, uh, unfathomably hard thing to understand for the non-pugilist, which is making weight. You see, when people think of making weight, people think that all you have to do is just really suck up, starve yourself, and then you boil down to some incredible weight that gives you some physical advantages over your foe, and that is all you have to do in order to become victorious in a fight. Like for example, homie Ricky was discussing how a lot of people tend to see Devin Haney as a weight bully just because whenever he stands next to some of his opponents when he was fighting at 135, he looked bigger and taller. His arm reach was longer for the most part. And especially he would blow up in weight for a fight night more so than his nemesis. But what a lot of people fail to understand is that you cannot starve yourself in order to make weight because that does not make you competitive. The only way you can come down safely into such weights is that you do so by working out, trying to make sure that you don't strain or hurt yourself in doing so, proper education, and dedication to your sport, right? Now, as you age, of course, to make weight becomes harder because your metabolism changes and slows down. So naturally, with age, you're gonna go up in weight, right? And then you are gonna fall into what most people think are likely gonna be better, more suitable weights because they think that that's where you should walk around. Now, I disagree with a couple of things that the homie Ricky said, which is that Devin Haney belongs in a weight class closer to 140. And there's obviously good reasons why he would think that. Uh, but I disagree because at 135, Devin Haney never once had an issue making his weight uh, on the first attempt, right? And although he did look emaciated and very weak, at least skinny and parched, he's still obliged by the demands of weight making, so that he never had a weight advantage over his foes. Now, when we saw him skinny and sullen eyed and with his cheekbones popping out, of course, that makes you think that he is struggling too much to make weight. But the struggle is only part of the sacrifice that a fighter must endure in order to be competitive. And the second thing about weight making, which might question you whether or not it is a suitable weight class for an individual, is whether in making that weight he is losing his ability to be competitive. And how can we say that about young Devin Haney when Devin Haney became undisputed, fighting some of the toughest fighters at 135 in recent history? How can we say that Devin Haney was a weight bully when he never once had an issue making weight and he was always dominant? 135 was naturally a competitive weight class for Devin Haney, and as such, he fought there. That's why he achieved the level of acclaim and accomplishment that he did. Now, let's hop on to what happened over this weekend. Devin Haney made his introduction to the next level up in fighting, which is to become a two division champion, going up in weight to 140 pounds in fighting a fighter in Regis Progr, a man who was a naturally and professionally experienced, historically fighting at 140, which is Regis Progr, and who arguably only lost to the man who ended up becoming undisputed at 140 and Josh Taylor. In other words, Devin Haney attained all the belts at 135, and his very first move was to go up in weight after he defended at 135 against the only fighter that people questioned whether he would beat and whether he was a legitimate undisputed champion in Lomachenko. He then moved up to fight a naturally heavier, more experienced, older fighter and Regis Progr, and he utterly destroyed and embarrassed that foe. In fact, he knocked down the guy and he was about to knock him down a couple of more times. So, what does that make you think? It allows you to think that whereas in 135, Devin Haney wasn't knocking down people, at 140, he's knocking down bigger men. So, some people are going to be under the impression that 140 is naturally the weight class that Devin Haney belonged in, completely negating the fact that he was competing at 135 to the point of becoming undisputed. And when you look at the roster of names under his belt, then you know that that cannot just easily be discounted as just being a person that was suffering at 135 and being a weight bully. Now, let's not forget though, let's be completely forthcoming and honest. The fight with Lomachenko did take place at a very early weight. They took weight very early in the day. So we do know that Devin Haney was struggling to keep at under 135 for his last fight. Still, nonetheless, he was at weight the day of the fight. Lomachenko conceded to it. Long story short, he never once had an official reason to go back and re-weight again in order to make a fight happen. This is young Devin Haney. Now, Devin Haney completely masterclassed his opponent. Now, I'm not too sure if you guys know this, but about 2 weeks ago, another very competitive, highly skilled fighter, Shakur Stevens, he put up one of the stinkiest, most boring fights in recent history. He fought Edwin de los Santos in a fight that many actually think De Los Santos won solely because Stevenson was on the back foot, running around, and didn't throw enough punches. But at the end of the night, it turns out that punch stats indicate that Edwin de los Santos broke a record by having thrown and landed the least amount of punches in a championship fight ever. He threw 40 punches that landed against Shakur Stevens. Now, this is one of the most boring fights you'll ever see. That accounts for that. Now, I want you to compare and contrast what happened over the weekend with another fighter that people have accused of being a hitter and a hugger, a runner and a Cheney fighter, just like they have done about Stevenson. They've said the same thing about Devin Haney. But guess what? Devin Haney made Regis Prograis break Edwin De Los Santos' record for least punches landed in a fight at 36. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Devin Haney went up to 140 in his very first test. He takes on a champion who had been knocking out, for the most part, everybody in his way, and who only had lost officially, because some people question whether that should have even been a loss, against the man who ended up becoming undisputed, and Josh Taylor. And he won every single round, maybe less one, knocked down that opponent, and made him land the least amount of punches in a professional championship fight ever at 36. And this was not a boring fight. This was not a hit and run. This was not a punch and hold kind of fight, a la the Vladimir Klitschko. Nothing like that. This was in the pocket, center of the ring. You're gonna miss, and I'm gonna make you pay for that kind of a fight. Where Haney dropped and landed an incalculable amount of punches on that fighter. The caliber of Regis Prograis, a proud champion. He also made him miss so many times, and he made him break a record for how few low punches he could land on the young, undefeated 31-0 with 15 KO Devin Haney. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you build a career. This is why we should not discredit fighters that take risks like Devin Haney and start calling them cherry pickers and beaters of old men and weight bullies. No, because like I've said before, and this is a truism of life, there is no such thing as equality or fairness in boxing. There is nobody that's 5'5", weighing 134.5 pounds, with the same arm reach, the same height, the same chin, the same punch power, the same footwork as the next guy. The only way you differentiate yourself from the next guy is you train harder, you learn different things, and you employ them. Devin Haney is who he is because he's trained harder, he's learned different things in each one of his fights, and he employs them. Everybody else is only taking a step back because they cannot work harder or learn smarter than that young man. Now, if you look back into Devin Haney's most recent outings, the list of fights that he's had is one of the most commendable ones. Next to, let's say, Jamal Charlo, and I guess maybe Errol Spence and Canelo Alvarez when he was making this run for undisputed, and even after the fact, Devin Haney is taking on the best names possible in the weight classes of which he is fighting in. Now, of course, because people still don't believe in Devin Haney, they still call him cherry picking, chinny, pillow fisted fighter with big nostrils. They still can't bet against him. Say what they say about him. He's done all these things, but guess what? They will never bet against him. And somehow, Devin Haney was the odds favorite. Why is he the odds favorite? Because regardless of what you think, it's hard to ignore the fact that Devin Haney is one of the greatest boxers and fighters, demonstrating incredible valor on in each and every single one of his fights. So there's a lot of naysayers. Now, if you've been following anything Devin Haney most recently, people have been calling for him to fight Men, the likes of Subriel Matias, who is knockout merchant with a 95% knockout rate. He's killed a man. He has about 20 fights, 19 wins. He's only lost one. He avenged that one and he made that fighter retire. He killed a man, uh, and they want that guy to fight Devin Haney. Now, there's been a lot of brouhaha and commotion about some rumors that state that Mr. Bill Haney, father of young Devin Haney, reached out to the Subriel Matthias camp to ask that fighter to fight. And it turns out that that for the most part, there's evidence to indicate that that was all a fabrication, that it was all cap, because he name dropped an individual who has nothing to do with Subriel Matias's management or his promoters. So that's when everybody realized that Bill Haney was either talking to the wrong person, making the wrong phone calls, or he was lying. But it doesn't really matter because if he fights Subriel Matias, I am of the belief that Subriel Matias is a walking punching bag with power. And that Subriel Matias is a very basic fighter.
Take that
Whereas
back.
Devin Haney, whereas Devin Haney has fought the greater level of competition. And each one of the fights that Devin Haney has taken on by name, if you cross reference, I would wager money to say that each one of the champions and fighters that Devin Haney has fought would beat the fighters, no names, and non champions that Subiel Matias has made retire or knocked out. In other words, Subriel Matias is a killer and a knockout merchant of men who've done nothing in the sport. And Devin Haney is a beater of men who have accomplished three, maybe four weight class championships, men who have uh, notoriety for their offensiveness, for their skill set, for their valor. Men like Jojo Diaz, Vasily Lomachenko, Luke Campbell, Jorge Linares. Men that I would wager would make it to the Hall of Fame as a shoe-in as soon as they possibly can get their name on that list. And none of those type of fighters can be found on Subriel Matias's record. All you can say is that he's killed a man that I'm sure nobody even knows what that guy's name is. Long story short, I do believe that Mr. Bill Haney did not reach out to Matthias Camp, but it doesn't mean that they're scared. It only just means that Devin Haney and Mr. Bill Haney are now looking to make big money fights. And that's why you hear the news about them calling out men at a heavier weight class at 147 at Keith Thurman and Mario Barrios. Mario Barrios, who has a baby belt, and Keith Thurman, who has none. But why do those names seem to make sense for the Haneys at the moment? Well, because Subriel Matias does not sell. Subriel Matias is a fighter that most hardcores know and absolutely no casuals have heard of. Keith Thurman is a fighter that hardcores and casuals know, and so is Mario Barrios. But I really do believe that the reason why Devin Haney is looking at these type of fighters is not necessarily because they make more money necessarily or exclusively. I think it has to do with the fact that the Haneys are very astute businessmen, and they do know one thing that nobody seems to put together, which is the boxing fandom has become divided between blacks and browns and whites and followers of the PBC and followers of the zone and followers of top rank who seem to hate each other and bicker and argue about which promotion, which promoter has the best fighters and puts on the best fights. and the Haney's know that. As such, this past weekend, the Haney's decided to have a one-shot contract to fight Regis Program on the zone. And now that they took away that man's belt, they are uh, men free to move wherever they want as contractors and men with no obligation to fight back with Matchroom. Now they want to go back to the PBC and get the money from the PBC fanboys. And before long, they're going to go back again to Top Rank to get the money from the Top Rank fanboys. That's what's happening. This is the state of fandom here in the United States of America. Men and women who fight, not about watching the best fights, irrespective of what broadcast will put them on, but they do think, oh, Matchroom is a British outfit. I'm all America, baby. Oh, Top Rank has my favorite Cuban fighters. Top Rank, baby. Oh, Golden Boy has a Mexican American Chicano fighters. Golden Boy, baby. We are so divided by our own personal proclivities in trying to identify with broadcasters and promoters that speak like us or look like us instead of seeing who puts on the best fights and keeping it that simple. And because the Haneys are astute and they know people are divided, they are now moving from one promotion to the next and one promotion to the next in order to take everybody's money and fight their fighters so that they can pick a little bit of here, pick a little bit of there. And in no way, heck, or form is Keith Thurman an easy fight for Haney's at 147. I hope that makes sense, but that's really what I think. So let's read a couple of these comments right here. First off, I hope each and one of you is having a wonderful even fall. Again, even fall just means afternoon or the sun went down. So thank you very much for hopping on here and commenting. I hope you've been having a wonderful night listening to me ramble while the homie Ricky clears his nasal passages because he has a cold. Mr. Vince Vargas, you are the man, as always. And he writes, yep, he had Espinosa beating Ramirez. Glad I watched that fight. Absolutely. And we will talk about that fight in a little bit, Mr. Vargas. Um, he goes on and says, when Espinosa got knocked down in the fifth, I thought it was going to be over. Like, there goes the momentum. But Espinosa kept with the plan and got him in the 12th. Absolutely. The homie Ricky LOLs at that. That's pretty sad. These punches, absolutely. Yeah, it was an embarrassment, to say the least, Mr. Vargas, what occurred to Regis Program. But the reason why that happened is not necessarily because Regis Program is 35, because nobody was saying that when he was knocking out Sean Cepeda. It's not because of his footwork, because nobody was saying that when he was knocking out everybody in his way. Nobody was saying that when he was taking on Josh Taylor. You know, the reason why he was successful was because he was heavy-footed, thereby allowing the heavy-footedness to allow him to be that concussive of a puncher. It's just that styles make fights, and like I said, Devin Haney is one of the few fighters that you see growth and development in every single one of his fights. Regis Prograis has been a simple fighter for the longest time, and he's like an old dog. Can't teach him new tricks. And Devin Haney is a fighter with a bag full of tricks. And it's quite simple. Devin Haney cannot come from fighting one of the craziest, most competitive fights that my favorite fighter, Vasil High-Tech Lomachenko, he cannot come from fighting that guy in a very competitive fight where both of them threw the kitchen sink, and of which I still had Lomachenko as a clear winner, 8 rounds, I would say, maybe a seven. But still, you cannot come from fighting one of the most accomplished, most special southpaws in boxing history. In my opinion, one of the top 10 southpaws in boxing history, in Lomachenko, to come down, to come up in weight to 140 to fight another southpaw who has been one of the most basic, simple, straight up and down, no frills southpaws in boxing currently in Regis' program. Just off account of the fact that he fought as well as he did against Lomachenko, that was enough for me to know Regis, not because of age, not because he was less fleet of foot, but because of Haney using every single fight up until that point to learn from, he was gonna just completely shock Regis program with everything. Now, the fact that he discovered that he had some pop in his punch at 140, that's just a little extra uh, incentive for that guy to set up on his punches and throw a little more. But Devin Haney just looked spectacular. And I don't think anybody here can actually look into this year's fights and say there's been any other fighter besides maybe Devin Haney and Naoya Inoue who's put on that kind of a performance against a heavier fighter and made that heavier fighter look that bad. Ladies and gentlemen, as much as it may hurt you, as much as you may disagree with me, Devin Haney is making you, the naysayers, if there are any, I hope there isn't, eat your words and your naysaying and taking it back. Because none of you would dare bet money against Devin Haney. Now, let's go back to reading a couple of things. Quan Chi, Devin Haney versus Steele, the biggest fight to make at 140. I agree. That fight is one of those fights that wow, anything could happen. Steele could knock out Devin Haney. Devin Haney could outbox Steele. Steele could counter the crap out of Devin Haney. It's incredible, that matchup right there. I don't know if it'll happen necessarily, Quan Chi, because I'm not too sure if you know this, but the Lopez, Teofimo Lopez Sr. and Bill Haney are very good friends. I know that they always josh and rib each other, but they are very good friends. And I think they would fight uh, and make it very exciting. The buildup would be great, but only when the money is right. And I'm not too sure if the money at this moment is right because it seems like Teofimo Lopez is being very adamant that he deserves much more recompense per fight than what he is being offered at the moment. In fact, I believe he just turned down this Heisman weekend, the fight that just took place last weekend, in order to sit out because he didn't like what Top Rank was offering as far as level of competition per the pay. So he sat out and he said, I would rather work as a garbage man. And there's a video of him throwing trash because it pays better, apparently, to quote. And Devin Haney, of course, we know that Devin Haney and his camp expect proper recompense for the moves that he is making because they demanded that this weekend's fight was pay per view. Now, whether you agree or not, if it was pay per view, a lot of people disagree with that on whether it was pay per view. I don't, I never am discouraged about paying for a fight, not necessarily because I make that kind of money, but because I am a person involved in the sport. I know how hard it is to make a buck in this here sport. I know how hard it is to make a living taking punches to the face. And I respect these fighters for their sacrifice. If I could, I would properly compensate them. If I cannot pay for a pay per view, I won't. But I've never had that issue. But it's quite simple. Devin Haney fought for a real belt versus a real champion who has a great record, and he asked for $60. Now, I want you to compare that with Tank Davis, Gervonta Tank Davis, and the Ryan Garcia, who asked of us $80, no belts on the line, catch weights, and rehydration clauses, and it sold 1.4 million pay-per-views. What's wrong with that picture, guys? I ask you, who deserved our money? The guys who are actually fighting each other, taking on the toughest names, and just because the casuals don't know them, we shouldn't support them? Or the guys who are playing the sport of boxing, and because one guy looks like a model and the other guy has tattoos on his body, that those guys are the ones more deserving of our hard-earned greenbacks? You tell me. Nonetheless, Devin Haney had a pay-per-view event. Now, you put those two things together, Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney wanting money, right? It either has to be built up, well, so that means they have to start making more noise, start ingratiating themselves with the casual fan base who usually buys frivolous fights just because of name recognition, not necessarily accomplishment or excitement, just simply off the ignorance that they don't know much about the sport, but they do know who they've heard being talked about. This is basically just promotion and companies like broadcasters, ESPN, just saying who is who and what is what. Not so much what they've done in the sport. But what I'm trying to get at is this. It's going to be a fight down the line that those two fighters are going to want a lot of money from. And I'm not too sure if it's going to be that easy to make that fight happen unless somebody important and powerful like the Saudis get involved. Um, but yeah, I do think that is a heck of a fight. Quan Chi, I'd love that fight. I don't have a dog in that fight, but I can tell you one thing. Both of those young fighters are incredible. Mr. Vince Vargas goes on and says the ring when he I heard the ring announcer say ending new, I was shocked because I thought the hometown guy was gonna get it. Espinosa was full of emotion, and that's what boxing is all about. Underdog with heart and will. Fight of the year because I seen it. Ha ha ha. JK. Well, a lot of people are saying that Mr. Vargas. They are saying that Rafael Divino Espinosa versus Robesi El Tren Ramirez was their fight of the year. And I don't have any kind of complaints against that. I mean, it is an opinion. There is no right or wrong. But I don't really think it was the fight of the year. Not in my opinion, at least. Was it chock full of suspense? Yeah. Was it chock full of excitement and activity? Yeah. Mostly on the Mexican side, though. The Mexican was putting in work, throwing punches in bunches, crazy combinations for a unheralded, unknown fighter who's fought guys with upside down records. That guy really surprised everybody. Nonetheless, Robesi Ramirez wasn't his naturally competitive, dominant self. In fact, we were we were displayed El Tren's ability to resist punches and capitalize on his opportunities when he ended up hurting uh, Divino in the fifth. For the most part, that was one of the only clean uh, punches that he had landed so far. Right, everything else seemed to be a wash for the Mexican, in my eyes, at least. Again, just an opinion. And then Robesi Ramirez landed that incredible punch, very similar to how Fundora, Sebastian Fundora, got dropped by the New Mexican. I forget what his name is at the moment. I'm 44 years old and I've done a lot of drugs, so I apologize for that. But nonetheless, he ended up getting dropped and completely wobbled. And in fact, he was almost out because once he got up, he ended up falling almost face forward into the ropes. Now, any other third man in the ring, they would see the kind of damage that just took place. And they might even throw in the towel and say, "That's it, buddy. You're out on your feet, and that's that." But I am very proud of that referee. He knew that up until that moment, the Mexican was being victorious, and clearly so. And that had been the first and mostly only punch that had any kind of effect on the Mexican that landed by the Cuban. So he decided to give him a shot. He was also conscientious enough that there was only a few seconds left in that round before it ended. Whereas any other third man in the ring would have stopped it, because we've seen people stop fights for worse things. This guy allowed them to fight on account that A, he knew there was seconds remaining, B, the Mexican was putting in a heck of a fight, and C, that was the only punch that he had landed so far that had any kind of lasting effect. So he went on and let him fight. He went on to the Mexican went on to gather his senses, be competitive, gave up maybe a couple of hard-earned rounds to the Cuban. Nonetheless, I still had a clear victory with a knockdown in the favor of the Mexican. In my eyes, that fight was a fight of the year contender, not based off how competitive it was, but mostly how suspenseful it was, because you knew just by the few punches that Robesi Ramirez clearly landed that they were having a very uh, telling and lasting effect on the Mexican. And that the Mexican, if he somehow made one grave mistake, he might not get up. And he got popped about two, three different times, and he was wobbled. Nonetheless, the Mexican came back full force, stood his ground, and he almost knocked out and stopped and put him on the queer street, the Cuban, at the last few seconds of the 12th round. Good fight, lots of suspense, but it was not competitive enough for my. So I think fights like Hov Sion versus Neri, and Munguia versus Deremchenko, and Serrano versus Erica Cruz might be a fight of the year, and maybe even Devin Haney versus Lomachenko, more so than this fight. But I do understand why you and a lot of other people are of the mind that there was that was one of the fight of the year contenders. I have no qualms about it. I just think some of the fights earlier on in the year were much more competitive and allowed for a different intrigue. It was incredible to watch that Mexican drop on his knees and cry. Those moments stay with you as a boxing fan. Mr. Adam Hurley, good even fall to you, sir. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much for hopping on again. You know how what we always say. We love our listeners, the ones that come and engage us, the ones that comment. Thank you very much, Mr. Hurley. Uh, we are so glad that you are back and that you have a phone. And you right, if Haney wants to move up to 147, he's gonna have to fight Crawford. Well, one of the things that might prevent that fight, Mr. Hurley, is the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, Errol Spence is firm and adamant and standing up for himself and saying that the rematch between Errol Spence, Errol the True Spence, and Terrence Bud Crawford has to take place at 154. I know they're still playing hardball. The other guys don't. One guy doesn't want to give. The other one doesn't want to give. But there is still some talk about how one of the possible fights in the remaining two fights in the PBC contract with Canelo Alvarez may include an Terrence Crawford fight next. And for his last one in September, likely a Mexican Independence Day, Benavides. So I think it's a safe time for Devin Haney to consider moving up to 147 because his next fight wouldn't necessarily have to be Terrence Crawford because he doesn't have to petition to fight for the WBC at 147. And especially if Terrence Crawford moves up to 154 to take the rematch on for big money and just to shut up all the other people that said that Errol the Truth Spence was not competitive at 147 because he was weight trained, then we might never see that fight. But here's the thing: as great as Devin Haney is a fighter, the only reason why you really have to give it to Terrence Crawford is because Devin Haney proved this past weekend that even when he has you hurt, he doesn't take the necessary risk to end you right there. So when you don't end a fight decisively, as only a knockout can or a stoppage, that just means that your opponent has more life, has more rounds, has more time to throw in that punch, which again, the one truism in the sport of boxing is the puncher's chance. So you leave those guys out there to hit you with something that might just completely upend your plans to be victorious. Terrence Bud Crawford does not take those risks at letting you survive. Once he hurts you, he's going to do everything to take you out. And for the most part, at 147, he's taking everybody out convincingly. So yeah, I don't think that fight would happen, but if it does, Devin Haney will likely get stopped. And the homie Ricky says, "Ain't no way Buddy staying at 147 to fight Devin." LOL. True, Ricky, says Mr. Adam Hurley. Uh, homie Ricky states, "I like Top Rank as well, but I'm a Golden Boy fan. We know that." Adam Hurley states, Al Heyman was supposed to talk to Canelo today about who he would fight next. The names I heard were Benavides, Crawford, or Jamal. And yeah, Jamal. Look, I have a love hate thing for Jamal. First, I wouldn't say hate because I can't hate a person that I don't know. But I do hate how the sanctioning bodies have been protective of that fighter there. Yeah, especially the WBC. He's just a casualty of politicking and favoritism. Uh, but he also held up the belts, and for that, as a boxing fan, I really don't like because he should have done what Devin Haney did. Devin Haney did the right thing when he vacated this past week or two all of his belts at 135. He did the best thing for the sport of boxing and the fans by creating all of those vacancies. Because now that means there's going to be three fights out there for the WBA, IBF, and the WO, where the two top names are going to fight for a vacancy to see who comes out on top. We already know that Edwin De Los Santos and Shakur Stevens fought for one of those belts. There's three other possible fights that are going to take place, and all because Devin Haney did not allow the sanctioning bodies to have him hold on to those belts. He said, you know what? I'm going to stay at 140, and I'm not going to play with the sport, and I'm not going to play with the fans. I'm not going to act like I hold all these belts. I already did. I'm going up to 140. He did the right thing. Jamal held on to those belts without defending for 2.5 years. And then once he decides to, he asks for clemency from the WBC in order to catch weight and bring up a fighter to weight divisions. And so, in Jose Benavides Jr. And somehow these sanctioning bodies allowed that. Corrupt, despicable, and I can't believe Jamal didn't do the right thing and let go of that belt or belts a long time ago. That's why I have this dislike for that Texan fighter currently. I think Canelo versus Bud would be a good fight. Canelo versus Benavides is uh, first choice, and of course, the homie Ricky says that he's got Theo for the win against Devin Haney. Well, anything can happen to homie Ricky. Um, Mr. Adam Hurley states some expected Canelo to pick Jamal, but I hope it's Benavides. Yep, we hope it's Benavides. I can't stress how much that fight has to be made now. But I do think that uh, that Mr. Al Heyman understands big money, right? Um, he knows that if Canelo Alvarez loses the next fight, the third fight is going to sell less because we know that whoever beats him, especially if it's a much smaller fighter like Terence Crawford, who's three weight divisions lower than him, two, three, that if he beats him, that's not going to look good on Canelo to go up to fight at 168 and fight a naturally physically bigger specimen than Dave Benavides. That fight won't sell. That fight won't sell as much on account of Canelo having lost to a smaller man. So that fight is just a lose for Canelo for the most part because fighting a much smaller fighter makes you look like a coward when you could fight the guy that people have been demanding of you for the longest time. Um, Mr. Adam Hurley continues. He says, "You're right, Ricky. The Spence beating don't sit right with me either." Yeah. The homie, oh, that's in response to Mr. The homie Ricky, who states, "I think so too. Plus, wouldn't mind seeing Bud get knocked out. Haha, that Spence beating don't sit right by me." Yeah, well, you're a big the True Dispense fan, homie Ricky, like me, similarly, but it's okay. And thank you, says Mr. Hurley. The homie Ricky states, "It's not Jamal's fault that WBC did not do his job and strip him." I understand the homie Ricky. You're just going to do whatever people allow you to do, right? If you're a serial killer and you get suspected of being a serial killer, and then they go and they try to uh, catch you on these allegations of being a serial killer and they don't find nothing and they let you go and then you go back and doing it again, you're only going to do whatever others allow you to do. The WBC didn't do its job and they did not strip the homie Ricky. It's up to the sanctioning bodies to do their effing job and strip a fighter. And Carlos Adames' job, since he is paying the fees for the belts, absolutely the homie Ricky. Carlos Adames has to stand up for himself and demand and maybe even sue the WBC for not honoring the obligations to represent him as he is paying uh, fighter on these sanctions. Absolutely. But guess what? I think Adames is a PBC fighter. And the homie Ricky takes my joke and says, "I have a few bodies." Ha ha ha. Now, I sort of digressed because I ended up going off on the off topic a little earlier. But going back to Liam Paro, because this weekend was one of the greatest weekends of this year's for the sport of boxing, in particular, if you like the underdog. Liam Paro, the Aussie, who helped prepare Jeff Horn to fight Manny Pacquiao about 6, 7 years ago now. Uh, Liam Paro fought a man from Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken, Cleveland, Ohio, by the name of Montana Love, a matchroom fighter. In fact, both of them were matchroom fighters, and both of them fight at 140. Montana Love is more famously known for being the guy who was getting his behind handed to him by another Australian fighter. Uh, the last name is Spark. Uh, and then once he was so frustrated at getting beat up, he ended up closelining the Australian and flipping him over the ropes, where the Australian almost landed on his head. That could have been catastrophic. So they had a fight over the weekend. Now, there was a time when Montana Love was the fighter that Mr. Eddie Hearn was betting on to be the next American star, or at least under his table at 140. But now Liam Paro ended up knocking that guy out if I'm not mistaken, in the fifth or sixth round over the weekend. Now, if you have seen the Amparo fight his last opponent, Brock, uh, what was his name? Another Australian, you knew that he was the goods. Once you start researching more into the Amparo, he's the guy who years ago he ended up emulating the Manny Pacquiao fighting style so that Jeff Korn could end up beating that guy. In other words, he's a very good fighter that can imitate styles, very much like the homie Ricky. Now, Liam Paro knocked out Montana Love. I'm not too sure if that was an underdog fight, but I know that if you know anything and you've been following Liam Paro, you know that he was going to be dangerous. And you know that Montana Love has not developed as well. So I think maybe Liam Paro was the favorite. Nonetheless, he ended up beating the American in American soil. The fighter who had been more heavily promoted and invested by Matchroom and Mr. Eddie Hearn got his behind handed to him over the weekend in San Francisco. All right. Um, And one thing that the homie Ricky was, going back to the homie Ricky when he was talking about his amateur fight, how he sucked down to I think it was 119. He ended up overdoing it. He ended up sucking down to like 119 or something like that. That I wanted to touch on is this: California is a very strict state for fighting. You must do everything proper. You must do everything kosher. And Montana Love, when he made weight on Friday of past week, he had jewelry on in his ears. And the sanction, the boxing commission, the CSAC for California, the California Sporting Agency or something to that effect, they made him take off all of this jewelry. And in the case of homie Ricky, when he made weight, I don't know if the homie Ricky remembers this, he had one piece of stubble in his chin. He had like two, three little pieces of hair on his chin. And they made him go to a pharmacy to buy a razor and to shave those three hairs off. That's how strict California's sporting commissions are. Incredible. It really was incredible. Um, but Liam Paro beating Montana Love is not necessarily. Uh, yeah, so the homie Ricky says, yeah, that ref was a racist. Not too sure why homie Ricky was that guy, white, black, what was it? And he says he didn't like the fact that I had cornrows. Yeah, so I remember that. Homie Ricky, obviously, he had long hair, I believe, back then, so he ended up uh, making cornrows. There's nothing wrong with fighting with cornrows, but it's almost like the the ref wanted, or the commission there that was sanctioning wanted the homie Ricky to take off his cornrows, right? Obviously, the reason why the homie Ricky set up his hair like that is so that he wouldn't have to deal with his hair flailing all over his face in the fight, and as he splashed water on his face, right? So they made him fight with a beanie on. If I'm not mistaken, they made him cover up the cornrows and put on a beanie. Now, what that ended up doing is that obviously the headgear did not sit flush and well on homie Ricky's head. And when coach was splashing water on him, all that did was absorb all that water and made the headgear move even more so and made it very uncomfortable. And his headgear was just moving all about. It was incredible. It was like, why don't you just, if what you're trying to do is protect the fighter, why don't you just not sanction this fight? Because now you're making it more advantageous for the other guy. It was incredible. It was just one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever seen by California Commission sanctioning amateur fight. But yep, this is California for you guys. It's very strict. Mr. Adam Hurley says it sounds like Ricky was working at a fast food restaurant. Yeah, maybe so. So going on to other underdog fights. Now let's talk about another underdog fight that happened over the weekend, which this is a female fighter, a female fight uh, who ended up becoming one of the upsets of the year. Now, there's an Australian fighter. This fight over the weekend in San Francisco had a lot of Australian fighters, and Ebony Bridges, a female Australian fighter, was one of them who ended up fighting a Japanese uh, fighter. Uh, and her name was Mio Yoshida. Now, this is why I say the fight between Ebony Bridges and Mio Yoshida was one of the upsets of the year. And the reason for that is because Mio Yoshida had just fought 3 weeks ago and she had lost. Now, to be fair, Miss Ebony Bridges, the Australian, had last fought exactly 1 year and 1 day ago from the day of the fight. So she was on a pretty long layoff. Layoffs do not help out a professional boxer, guys, because it's hard to go to the gym and prepare yourself as if you're having a fight when you know you don't have any kind of fights upcoming, right? You have to have some incentive, some motivation to take the extra step, to do the double, triple days to fight, because I mean, it's very time consuming to be training. And the other thing about Miss Ebony Bridges is that she is some kind of a model, like an Instagram model or something like that, and I think a teacher. So she has a full time job, and she also, is a very attractive lady who takes a lot of provocative and sensual photographs. So she does that. So that's how she develops her fan base. Now, as a result of that modeling and whatnot, she gets to travel the world, and I think she was hanging out with Conor McGregor and just doing all kinds of other stuff because she didn't have anything else to do, right? So she would be a teacher, she would train in boxing, she would be a model, and she was enjoying her life because there was no promise of any upcoming fight. Now she made weight, so no excuses, right? But maybe she just didn't have the kind of training camp or sparring as she might have had she been a bit more active. Long story short, she was on a long layoff, and Mio Yoshida was a last minute replacement for a fight that fell through for Ebony Bridges. And Mio Yoshida had just barely come off a fight less than 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, actually, a month, because after that fight, she only had 1 week of rest. And then they approached her for a fight that was supposed to take place 3 weeks later. So that meant that they had to make her heal, make the weight, spar to prepare for a fighter like Ebony Bridges. And if you know anything about Ebony Bridges, she's a come forward, very aggressive, high output puncher. She goes to the body, goes to the head. She's relentless. She's a tank. So you have to fight for a rugged, relentless, very brutal and punishing fight. Uh, and the worst thing about it is that Mio Yoshida, her trainer, wasn't available. So she had to find a trainer in the last minute who only had an opportunity to work with her for 2.5 weeks. And she ended up taking that fight. And over the weekend, ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to say that Mio Yoshida outclassed and outbattled Ebony Bridges. She fought in Ebony Bridges style, even though that's not her case. She's more of a puncher boxer. That's his thing in the women's side of the sport. And all she did was just proper punch placement, proper punch selection, and she would just take one step back to make enough room to throw her punches as Ebony Bridges was coming forward, and she ended up beating all the odds. And this person who just barely came off of a rugged fight, which she lost, and who had to train with a new trainer for only 2.5 weeks, who got the call 3 weeks to fight, she ended up beating the favorite promotion ready fighter, Ebony Bridges. We have a new champ at I think it's 118 for women. Incredible. It was incredible. Another incredible underdog beating all of the odds. Now, let's go on to read a couple of the comments before we hop on to the underdog upset fight of the year, in my opinion. Not necessarily the fight of the year, just in my opinion at least, but the underdog of the year. The homie Ricky says, yeah, ha ha ha. Mr. Adam Hurley laughs at the fact that maybe the homie Ricky was working at a fast food restaurant. But I tell you what, Mr. Hurley, he was a full time student, a full time employee, and training to be a boxer, sparring everybody that came into town. It was incredible. I've never seen anybody with that kind of a hustle or drive to accomplish all of the dreams than he did. El Pachuco, saludos. Whenever I read El Pachuco, when he hops on, I always think about those boogaloo sounds. You know those, like the let me see those Mexican bands like La Hmm, maybe not La Sonora. No, Matancera was La Sonora Matancera was Cuban. There was a Sonora, not Dinamita. There was a Sonora. I can't remember, but it's the biggest one of Mexico. They had those nice cumbias, boogaloo sounds. I always imagine, Pachuco just getting down with some good boogaloo, some nice mambos, just some good music right there. The Pachucos, the cool cats. Saludos to you, Pachuco. Mr. Adam Hurley, I gotta go, guys, but I'll see you soon. Take it easy, Mr. Adam Hurley. Always a pleasure. Be well, be safe out there. Healthy of body and sane of mind is what I say. Mr. Vince Vargas says, what about the Warner DK Metcalf fight? Just kidding, 49ers talk. Hey, LOL. Yeah, I apologize, Mr. Vargas. I can't help you there. I watched the game though, but halfway. So I was like sort of in and out. El Pachuco y el Espinosa fight was epic. Puro corazón, compa. La neta sí. La neta, absolutamente neta. And let's talk about that now, right? Now that we've caught up. Mr. Vince Vargas does like to provide his salutations to El Pachuco, and he says, yes, sir, El Pachuco. That was a good fight. Espinosa. Okay, let's talk about it. In the sport of boxing, there is one truism, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the puncher's chance. The sport of boxing is not necessarily a sport where, like I discussed for the most part in this life, that the person who trains the hardest, learns the most, and employs their training and their learning and becomes victorious. Like I said about Devin Haney. That's not necessarily what happens in the sport of boxing, right? We know that because there are upsets, those fights that nobody really gives a shot to a fighter, male or female, and all of a sudden they completely surprise us. They beat the favorite fighter, the hometown fighter, the one with the money in the back. It happens all of the time. Well, it doesn't happen all of the time, but it happens enough of the time where when it happens, we remember those fighters fondly. There's men like Andy Ruiz, El Gordito, the guy who used to eat what was it, the Snickers bar? Three Musketeers, I think it was Sneakers. One of the upsets of the decade when that Mexican think he might be Mexican. Maybe he's Mexican American, but I know he calls himself Mexican, and I know he lives down south, like in San Diego or something like that. Nonetheless, this guy fights Anthony Joshua as a last minute replacement, and he takes the world by storm. He makes the world his oyster. He upends the favorite fighter, the Black Adonis, the chiseled fighter, who is making his American debut in New York City. He goes in against all odds. He gets that one chance, and he maximizes it, and he stops Anthony Joshua. Incredible. And this past weekend, Buster Douglas, Buster similarly did the same thing with Mike Tyson. Underdog, one of the greatest underdogs that you can ever imagine. Going up there, maybe the odds were like 20 against him, 20 for one against Buster Douglas, if not more than that. He stops and knocks out Mike Tyson. Right. And this past weekend, we had a similar fight that took place between an unheralded, unknown Mexican fighter at 130 who ended up, 130 or 126? Uh, I digress. It's one of those. I think it was 126 because I think that's where El Venado Lopez fights, and I think that's where Emmanuel Navarrete used to fight before he moved up to 130. Yeah, I think it's 126. Robisi Ramirez 126. This fighter, his name is Rafael, nicknamed El Divino Espinosa. Who, once you look at his record, he only has 24 wins. But you look into his record, and he has no notable names. A lot of the fights that he's taken were against fighters with upside down records. More losses than wins. And if I'm not mistaken, he was the last minute replacement also. Very similar to Andy Ruiz and very similar to Mio Yoshida, the female fighter who also upended the odds and became champion. Now, this fight, once you saw who was in the corner of Espinosa, you knew that there was trouble for the Cuban. Why? Because I think it was Manny Robles, the the Mexican trainer, who was in his corner. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. Manny Robles. He's doing the corner work for this guy that I've never heard of, right? And the few fights that I've seen, he didn't look spectacular. He didn't look like a world killer. He was just basic fighter. And now he was gonna fight one of the most talented and accomplished Olympian fighters, and the southpaw to boot, and Robesi El Tren Ramirez, right? I mean, what were the odds? I think the odds were, let me see this. Let me see what the odds were. They were actually quite incredible. Um, I had the odds right here. Um, let's see. Let's do the research again. Uh, Espinosa versus Ramirez odds. Ramirez is under 1,200 betting favorite at DraftKings Sportsbook. Espinosa is the underdog at plus 650 odds. Wow, guys, that's like a no hoper. That's like you bet $100 and you make a killing, right? And when you saw Ramirez step into the ring, And then you saw Espinosa step into the ring. The first thing that you saw was that Espinosa was 6 foot, who knows what, with the arm reach that was incredible. And you're like, oh, okay, that's going to present a challenge to Ramirez. Because I don't think Ramirez has ever seen anybody at 126 that height. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. Now, when the fight started, the first thing that you saw is that the Mexican had no fear, had no respect or no regards for his opponent against him. When he saw the fighter across from him, he didn't think, "Oh, this guy's a former Olympian. Oh, I'm fighting in Florida, a place full of Cubans and Puerto Ricans that are hollering and hooting in favor of him and screaming against me." He didn't see any of that. He just says, "My job is to throw punches," and that's exactly what he did. He started throwing punches and punches, punches and punches. Now, I don't know what his professional career is against southpaws, but he did exactly everything right that you're supposed to do against a southpaw. In fact, that was one of the greatest displays of how to fight against a southpaw that I've ever seen. Now, he did have the physical attributes to promote that kind of fight, where he could be successful as an orthodox fighter against a southpaw, but he did everything right. Now, in my eyes, the Mexican was very clearly dominant. It was rounds, in fact, that I don't think Ramirez threw anything. And everything that he did throw, he was missing or the Mexican was blocking. The thing is this, though. When El Tren Ramirez landed, he had an effect. And in the fifth round or so, after the Mexican is throwing so many punches and cutting off the ring and pushing his nemesis back, winning in my eyes very convincingly because the Cuban ain't doing nothing. In the fifth round, right before the round ends, uh, the Mexican is being cornered. He takes a step back. He drops his left hand. Ramirez throws an overhand right. The guy is in defensive at the moment. He lands it flush, uh, and he ends up dropping that guy all the way down to the ropes. Landed firm and flush in his behind, and the Mexican does muster himself to get up, but he's on Queer Street. His legs are wobbly. They turn into spaghetti. He gets up, probably at the count of 4 or 5. He stumbles forward against the ropes. He sustains himself, turns around, and if anybody's going to stop the fight, it's going to stop the fight right there because he was really hurt. But the ref, being so smart and conscientious that there's only a few seconds left in the round, and knowing that the Mexican had been dominant the whole fight right before that without really taking any kind of damage, he allows that fighter to gather his wits. He lets him come back in. The bell ends in 1 second or two. Then the Mexican gathers himself and fights again very powerfully, very aggressively for the rest of the fight. And occasionally he does get hit by the very adept and very skillful, very quick, and great counter punching Cuban. So there's at least 2 or 3 different times uh, in total where the Mexican is hurt, but he doesn't drop after that. And he continues to bring that relentless pressure. And by the end of the fight, although both of them have hurt each other, and you can tell that Ramirez is a very powerful fighter because he's leaving the Mexican's face marked. Even though, in my opinion, he's not landing that many punches, the few that he is landing are leaving traces of the damage and the punches that the Cuban has landed. And before the fight ends, the Mexican, knowing that he has a job to do, which is he has to take it away from the judge's hands. He does everything in the last round to try and stop his opponent. And with 10 seconds left to go. He seriously hurts the Cuban. Now he puts him on Queer Street. The Cuban is shaky all over. The round ends, and the Cuban starts stumbling, almost about to be knocked down again himself. As he ended up dropping him. He ended up dropping the Cuban in the last round, if I'm not mistaken. And he's about to stop him a few seconds right before the fight ends. The Mexican showed grit, heart, or what the and what they call jolot, heart. He makes sure that everybody there is a nervous Cuban, a nervous Puerto Rican. He silences the crowd. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the strange things start taking place. Stranger things start taking place. Do you guys remember what happened after the fight ended? Can you guys can you recall what happened after the fight ended? Anybody want to take a guess or just refresh your mind on what it is that was going on? Very strange things going on. Okay. Let me remind you. When the fight ended, really call a winner. ESPN broke into a commercial break that was close to 10 minutes long. Once they come back, although in my opinion, the Mexican won 8 rounds convincingly with a knockdown, maybe even 8 rounds convincingly with a knockdown. Once ESPN comes back to broadcast, all we see is a, footage, montage of videos that are basically accentuating the activity and the success that the top ranked Cuban fighter fighting in Florida was having. In other words, about so video was only highlights showcasing the success that Cuban had. And yet, very little played of the Mexican popping the Cuban's head with uppercuts, going to the body relentlessly, hitting him with the southpaw killer. None of that really was displayed. And then one of the commenters, if I'm not mistaken, this is what's his name? The Mexican guy. He says that the WBC, or was it the WBA, the sanctioning body had to intervene and check the scorecards on the judges just to make sure that they looked right. And that is the reason why there was a delay in calling out the winner. Ladies and gentlemen, the fix was in. They were trying to find a way for why the Mexicans should have lost. Why Robesi Ramirez, as great of a fighter and as good of an account he displayed on himself when he had success, why that guy should win, and why we should basically be deceived into thinking that the Mexican did not convincingly win that fight. The WBC had to go to the judges to make sure that the cards looked right. ESPN had to take a break to edit footage to make the Cuban look better than he did. But somehow, after much deliberation and controversy, they raise both of their hands and they say, and the new. and the unheralded Mexican fighter who weighs 126 but yet measures in height 6 foot 1 with a 7 inch out hand reach above the Cuban. He takes the belt, drops to his knees, he sheds tears and happiness. My household jumped in joy. It was one of the most incredible fights of this here year on account that this is why we follow the sport. Not because there's great fighters out there with incredible skill set, not because there's guys that have the best nutritionists or they work harder than the next guy, not because there's poor guys out in the world that are punching a bag made out of a satchel filled with rock, not necessarily because of that, but because you never know when the underdog, the Rasquachi, is going to become the person who will go down in the history of the sport for having defied all odds and will live in infamy for the rest of their lives. This is why we do this, ladies and gentlemen. We watch the sport not because our favorite fighter will always win, but because they may not always win, but they will get themselves back up on their feet. Not because this guy looks like us, will he win? No, because sometimes past the skill set, past who has the better nutritionist, past who gets the better sparring action, sometimes all it takes is heart. Sometimes all it takes is a will to live and fight again. And Espinosa, Rafael Divino Espinosa, accentuates why we love the sport. Because you, ladies and gentlemen, can dream and make your dreams come true. When somebody tells you you're gonna lose, you prove them wrong. Now, there is a lot of people trying to discredit the Mexican now on account that, oh, he had physical advantages over the Cuban. He was 7 inches taller and he was 7 inches longer in arm reach. He was a weight bully because he sucked down to 126. We fighting at what? At what, guys? Heavyweight? I mean, he's 6 foot something. Should he be a heavyweight? No. The reason why he is not a weight bully is because there is no such thing as being 6 foot tall and coming down to 126 without doing so by sacrifice and hard work. The reason why that man was able to come down to that weight class is because he fought and ate and sweated down to that by blood, sweat, and tears. There is no such thing as a weight bully. When you put your word on a paper that says, I will fight at this weight, and you keep your word. There's no such thing as a weight bully. When you make a weight and you are competitive, there is no such thing as fairness and equality in the sport because everybody looks and is shaped different. It's what you do with your chances in sport that make you who you are. It's not if you're short, or if you're tall, or if you're old, or if you're young, or if you're black, or if you're white. It's the fact that you got a chance in the sport, like you have a chance at life, and you will maximize your opportunities and make something fruitful for yourself, something rewarding for yourself. Rafael Divino Espinosa, a fighter that nobody had heard of, a last minute replacement, a guy who, once you look at his record, is full of fighters that are upside down. That guy believed in himself. He took the punches, he picked himself up, dusted himself off, and went on to be a world beater. This is why we do it. This is why he does it. And we have to respect that. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest endings to this incredible fight year just took place over the weekend. Liam Parro, the Australian, comes to America and defeats the favorite hometown fighter in Montana Love, the fighter who Matchroom has been promoted heavily. Mio Yoshida, a last minute replacement, who just lost 3 weeks prior, 4 weeks prior, who has a new trainer that has only been working with her for 2 weeks, who has to take on the hometown promoted fighter and Ebony Bridges, goes over there and utterly and convincingly defeats the favorite famous fighter. And now, to seal the deal and to finish up incredible weekend of fighting, we have Rafael Divino Espinosa, who took on a promotion favorite fighter, a former Olympian, a fighter who was a champion, who everybody thought was the guy to beat Naoya Inoue at 126 when he makes that move. He just lost to what most would call a no name. And I want you to look at that icon in the screen, the one that represents me, Warp Speed, for today's live. The man surrounded by men clothed in black. The man on his knees, screaming and crying. That face right there, ladies and gentlemen, is why you should live your life with hope that you can accomplish each and every single one of your dreams, that nothing can stop you, only yourself. And if you believe in yourself, you can do it all. Incredible. Divino Espinosa, the man of the year, in my opinion. Not the fighter of the year, but the man of the year. I just don't say fighter of the year just because there is Rakhimov versus Cordina, Erica Cruz versus Amanda Serrano, and Jaime Munguia versus Sergey Derenchenko, who were much more action-packed, more evenly fought fights. But this, ladies and gentlemen, was the upset of the year, and in my opinion, this is what epitomizes and represents the future and the hope that only a sport like boxing can provide. The homie Ricky says that was a badass fight. And Pachuco says the body work was this by Espinosa was top notch. Absolutely. I mean, this guy really had to hunch down to throw those punches, and man, he was ripping. But you know what, Pachuco? The other thing you have to also think about is, man, can Robesi Ramirez take a punch? I mean, he was taking uppercuts left and right. He was taking shots to the liver, shots to the torso. He was just taking so many punches by that incredible Mexican output. It was incredible. I mean, all respects to Robesi Tren Ramirez. But man, oh man, he's got a chin and he can take a punch. And you know, most you have them. They can't really that. You know, once most Olympians in reality, once you hit him in the chin, they can't really take it. But man, oh man, El Tren really could take that punch. El Pachuco states Espinosa dominated most of the fight. It was a clear and decisive win. I absolutely agree with that. El Pachuco, no questions asked. Wow, I think that's what I wanted to address right there. Uh, so yeah, wow. Um, I did want to talk about a couple of other things, ladies and gentlemen. But I think for the most part, I'm sure that you guys have heard everything going on, right? Mr. Mr. Bill Haney has been caught capping and lying about offering Subriel Matthias a fight, and saying that Subriel Matthias ducked that opportunity because he was demanding $4 million to take that fight. Um, I think Mr. Bill Haney is not being completely honest in what he's reporting, and especially when Matthias Camp is saying they never talked to us. And in fact, the guy who he mentioned as being the person that he talked to, he has nothing to do with our stable or our promotion or our management. So that's all cap. We know that part right there. Uh, the other couple of things, of course, uh, that have been making the rounds is basically, you know, Josh Taylor, former undisputed, calling out uh, Jack El Gato Catterall for that rematch fight that a lot of people had been asking about for about a year now. But that's still preliminary talks. Another one of the most recent going ons that has been making a lot of rounds, and I'm not too sure what to think of it, is that apparently Teofimo Lopez and his camp have been in deep negotiations with the Subriel Matias to make a fight that apparently once Subriel Matias last fought his last opponent soon after Teofimo Lopez reached out. Teofimo Lopez and their team reached out to them to offer a fight, but I think that the IBF denied the opportunity to negotiate at that moment on account that it was revealed by Subriel Matias that he had seriously injured his hands and his wrist. Subriel Matias had a very swollen uh, left hand, which he reported as having uh, broken his knuckles. He reported that in the Pro Box TV interview, and his right hand sustained an injury, so that it was hurt. So, on account of that, the IBF got privy to the fact that he was injured, so they negated the opportunity for Matthias and the Lopez camp to really take themselves serious in negotiations. But now, as of most recently, it is once again reported that yep, they are in deep negotiations again, um, to make that fight happen. A unification between Teofimo Lopez and Subriel Matias, who apparently Teofimo Lopez wants to take that fight in February, while Subriel Matias and their camp wanted more in March and April to allow for his hand to heal up, right? So I guess this is quite serious, where there's actually even some prospective dates on when they should fight. Um, I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if that fight pans out, who do you guys have for the win? Do you guys have Teofimo Lopez, who should be arguably a de facto two-time undisputed one because he beat Josh Taylor, who should have been undisputed because nobody ever beat him for the belts, and because three sanctioning bodies were being very capricious and they stripped him of three of his four belts in less than 9 months. Uh, he beat that guy who was undefeated, having moved up to one weight class from where he was fighting at 135. Um, and recall that Teofimo Lopez, when he fought Lomachenko, some would argue that it should have been an undisputed fight because when Teofimo Lopez and Lomachenko fought, they had two belts each. And the only reason why Lomachenko didn't officially have one is because he had to relinquish it in order to make that fight happen, and Devin Haney got it granted to him. So, what I mean by de facto, I mean by all senses of the word, they should be undisputed. Now, we know that's not the case because on paper and on the record, of course, those fights lacked that fourth belt. That's why it was not officially called an undisputed fight. But it became a lineal for both of those opportunities. So Teofimo Lopez, a two-time de facto undisputed, but definitely two-time lineal fighter who sometimes can put up some underperformances, like he did with George Cambosis and Sandor Martin. If he fights Subriel Matias, who wins? Recall that Subriel Matias is a fighter who knocks out everybody or retires them, but yet he got his belt on a vacancy, who has never fought any former champions, who has yet amassed an incredible record of what 20 wins, 19 knockouts, one defeat, which he avenged by stopping that opponent, knocking him out. Who do you guys have for that win? The power puncher who's beaten nobody and got his belts in a vacancy, or the guy who's fought in incredible names and two weight classes and embarrassed an undisputed fighter in Josh Taylor and beat men the likes of Nakatila, Lomachenko. Uh, I mean, you run the gamut, right? Teofimo Lopez has also fought uh, an incredible bunch of fighters. It really is commendable what he's done. Uh, Vasily Lomachenko, Richard Comey, Masayoshi Nakatani, Diego Magdaleno. Yeah, he's done quite good for himself so far. Yeah, he fought George Cambosos, lost that one. Pedro Kempa, he beat that guy convincingly. Who do you guys have for that fight? Lopez versus Matthias. And in fact, Devin Haney versus Matthias. Who do you guys have for that win? I won't include Rolly Romero, and I won't include Brian Garcia because I don't think anybody would even go those fighters a chance, even with the puncher's chance being a truce. Yeah, I'm not too sure myself either. Anybody want to talk? Well, yeah. So there's this video that they had showed me. The sport of boxing is evolving, right? There's chess boxing. If you don't know what that is, it's you have to be a boxer and you also have to be a chess player in order to be a chess boxer. And in chess boxing, you take turns playing chess to gain points, and then you get back in the ring to fight the person you're playing chess with to get other points. It's a very interesting, very confusing concept, but I've seen it and I couldn't make sense of it, but it sounds fun. But that's just one of the evolutions of the sport. Secondly, there's handicap, wheelchair based boxing. Now, I just saw a fight on this video, and what they do is they strap down these fighters to their wheelchairs, and all they have to do is bob and weave and throw punches. Their wheelchairs don't move; they're just basically fixed in front of each other, and they throw punches. It seemed very limiting. Uh, it seemed very exciting, But what I did not like is the fact that the wheels of the wheelchair don't move and they're stuck in a frame. I think it'd be better if the wheels moved in order for some punches to rock the wheelchairs, and with that little ledge around them, maybe if they get pushed back, they can fall back. But I'm not too sure if anybody wants to risk them falling back and maybe injuring themselves. Nonetheless, this is a sport of boxing and it has to be violent, guys. If you guys want handicapped boxing to become bigger and respectable, you have to allow these guys to get hurt. I mean, they are already paraplegic and without their ability to move their legs. But I think maybe that sport has a chance to develop something. I think there has to be some advancements in the wheels of the wheelchair, because the wheels in the wheelchair are the same size. But I believe they have to create some type of metallic shrinkable type of wheel so that they could maybe bob and weave. So, like, let's say if you end up carrying your weight to the left side, leaning to the left side, the wheel on your left side should start shrinking or bending inwards in order for you to create the impression that you're, bobbing and weaving from the action. Similarly, if you move too much to the right, the wheel on the right starts tilting or shrinking in size. Um, and the left side, of course, starts to rectify itself so that you can start leaning in, so you could throw different combinations of punches. But I believe maybe that's going to be a very fun sport to take up soon enough. And of course, there is transgender boxing. Now, the WBC, as I reported about 2 months ago or so, the WBC is making transgender boxing, not transsexual boxing, transgender boxing. And transgender, of course, is when a person uh, changes their sex, through the practice of medicine. But the WBC is not going to allow natural sexes to fight the opposite natural birth sex. In other words, a man cannot transition into a woman, and that through the manipulation of medicine and the surgical advancements, they cannot assume that they are women so that they could compete against natural biological women who have not been aided to become women by the advancements of medicine, right? Men turn into women, they fight men that have turned into women. Not men that turn into women fight real women with genitalia that they were born with. And I think that's fun. But I was reading about this transgender fighter who was born a female, who ended up transitioning to a male through sex. He's a Brazilian living in the state of California, and his name is Manuel Patricio Manuel. Patricio Manuel is a transgender, but Patricio Manuel, he has a record of 3-0, and he's fought in men. He used to be a female uh, who was a boxer, if I'm not mistaken. He's 38 years of age right now. He ended up going through hormone therapy and surgical procedures in order to grow his beard and look more masculine. And in fact, I encourage you guys to do a quick Google search and look up Patricio Manuel, boxer. And I think you would agree that he looks like a man, right? He looks like a man. But he has actually fought three real men, not women turned men. He fought three real men. And ladies and gentlemen, he beat them. Patricio Manuel beat real, natural born men. Patricio Manuel, right? His nickname is El Cacahuate. Now, Patricio Manuel is one of the more notable fighters that have want to fight as men, but were born women. But he doesn't want to fight in transgender uh, uh, rings, or better yet, transsexual rings, because that's really what it is, right? A transgender changes sex. A transsexual is just a person that sort of dresses like one, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too sure, guys. I apologize. I'm not into the whole sexual politics. I don't know too much about it. I don't want to speak too much about it because I don't like to demonstrate my ignorance. But nonetheless, he fought three men and he beat his last opponent, if I'm not mistaken, via way of knockout. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, do you want to be that guy who loses to a man that used to be a woman? I mean, I don't know about you, but in my city, if something like that happens to you, you're not going to be living there for too long. They'll kick you out. That burns all your reputation. And let me tell you a funny story, right? Um, I was uh, I was 18 years of age. I think it was my second job. I was working at a place called Jack in the Box. I'm sure that you guys have heard of it. They make pretty good burgers. Back then, those burgers were huge, guys. The ultimate cheeseburger or the ultimate bacon cheeseburger was definitely ultimate. I could feed two people. Long story short, I was a young punk rocker, right? You know, uh, I grew up on hip hop, but in my rebellious teens, um, used to have this 5 gallon tank of gasoline in my room, and I would listen to punk rock or worse, drum and bass, that incredibly repetitive, simple music. And I would huff away at my gas tank, uh, kill my brain cells, and listen to punk rock. And long story short, I used to have this job at Jack in the Box, and they made me the cook. Like I'm the guy flipping the burgers, guys. Well, long story short, I ended up losing my job because somebody ordered an ultimate bacon cheeseburger, and I made the most ultimate bacon cheeseburger you can imagine. Some order comes in. They order, if I'm not mistaken, like around 55 burgers. Uh, my manager is pressing me to hurry up, hurry up. I have to flip, and this is not like anybody. It's not like I flip the burgers and throw the meat, and then somebody starts hooking up the burgers and puts on the lettuce, tomato, and mustard and whatnot. No, when you're the cook, you flip the burgers, you toast the bread, you put the condiments, you throw everything in there. Make sure you don't forget nothing. And if any special orders come in, oh, sans mustard, sans lettuce, you have to do that. So here I am having to take this order of 50 burgers, and somebody orders ultimate bacon cheeseburger. I'm calling for help. They all look at me like this is the moment where you prove your worth. I'd already proven my worth. So I said, "Oh, you guys want ultimate cheeseburger, huh? Okay then. Then let me make this ultimate cheeseburger." And I made the most ultimate cheeseburger. I must have thrown about 5 different patties and 10 different slices of cheese. This is why I got fired. The person gets their order out, and then 10, 15 minutes later comes back, and they walk up to my manager and says, "What is this?" And it's one of the biggest burgers you've ever seen with the most melty cheese you've ever seen. And then the manager comes back and she puts this burger, and I knew I messed up, and she says, "What is this?" And I said, "That's the most ultimate bacon cheeseburger you've ever seen in your life." Lost my job, right? Uh, but you're probably asking, what's the point of this here conversation? We were talking about transgender fighters. Okay, well, it's like this. I used to work with a gay guy there, and when you're a punk rocker, you start thinking about different things, right? You're rebellious by nature. You distrust the government. You distrust, certain structures like education and whatnot. You think everybody's your enemy. It's just what happens when you're a young punk rocker. And I once read in this magazine called Ultimate Rock and Roll, Maximum Rock and Roll, about the gay movement and whatnot. So I was already accepting. This was before everybody was popular. It was popular to like be all about gays and gay rights and everything like that. It was just a movement for love. Nowadays, it's become a movement for sex. It seems. Long story short, I used to work with this guy, and because I already got to work with the guy, now not only did I have an accepting impression of gay people, now I worked with a gay person and turned out to be cool. Until one day he isn't. And he calls me a bad word. And I call him a bad word. Right? Because when you're working under pressure, like a fast food restaurant is, you're young, uh, it's a lot of pressure. And sometimes you just get mad at each other. He said something I found offensive. I said something offensive about him, and I called him a bad word that you only call gay people that are promiscuous, to say the least. And yo, this guy got so offended, he wanted to fight right then and there. He goes, "Let's go outside. Let's go." That's what he says. Now here I am about to go and beat up on this guy. Then I forgot. The guy was a black belt karate guy. Man, he was a black belt. Here I am about to go fight this guy that was older than me because I called him a bad word and he called me a bad word. And that doesn't fly in my book. So we were going to go fight. But then the order comes in and I have to fill that first. And we're still boiling in anger, but we continue working. And then at the end of the day, we shake hands and we say, all right, we're not going to do that again. And I tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, if somehow I had fought this guy at the age of 18 and gotten beat up by this guy in my city, I would have to relocate. I would not have been allowed to live in my city because my reputation, whatever that was, would have been shattered and destroyed. Yeah. So this guy, uh, this trans boxer Patricio Manuel has done that to a few fighters. And my question now is, are those guys fighting? Or did they have to relocate? I'm not too sure. Let's go on. Homie Ricky is still beating Devin Haney. I had the Loma versus Theo fight a draw. Theo looked bad and not giving Loma a rematch. I lost appreciation for Theo because of that. You know what, Pachuco? I watched that fight a few times. I watched it like twice. And initially, I also had it a draw. And it's easy to think, though, that Lomachenko won that fight, right? Why? Because we know how good Lomachenko was and how young and much more inexperienced Teofimo Lopez was. So when Lomachenko goes over there and he was not his naturally convincing dominant self, it just looks bad on Lomachenko. But it doesn't mean that he necessarily lost. It just means that Teofimo Lopez gave him different looks, and Lomachenko had a slow start, and he gave up too many rounds. And yep, he's coming back at the end, but guess what? Tad too late. So yeah, I could definitely see though how that was a draw, and I believe it was a draw in my opinion. Uh, but nonetheless, they gave it as a clear win for Teofimo. And the thing I say about rematches, Pachuco, I don't care for them. A rematch, I'm a hardliner in rematches. A rematch is supposed to be executed only on draws, not in a competitive fight, not to turn around and make the favorite fighter the winner in the second time around, not for rematches because they favor the hometown fighter or because they make the most money. No, because it's a draw and there's no clear winner. And after that fight between Teofimo Lopez and my favorite fighter, Vasily Lomachenko, if the judges saw that Vasily Lomachenko lost, then guess what? That's just it. And we move on. The homie Ricky says, don't you start with your weirdness. Ain't nobody having time for that shit. Mr. Vince Vargas says they should have the trainers in the corner control the wheels by remote control to move the fighters around the ring like dance run. Move in and get inside. Whoa, see, Mr. Vargas? That's what I'm talking about. You see? It's innovation. See, I didn't even think about that. That's a whole different thing. It's almost like video game boxing. The trainers control the wheelchairs by remote control to move the fighters, and then the fighters have to throw punches and defend themselves. That is so cool of an idea. I don't know, that actually might work. That is a very involved, uh, you know, way of looking at the sport. I definitely think you're onto something, Mr. Vargas. Thank you for entertaining the notion of how to best make these very fringe displays of pugilism something that we can actually consider and take serious. So far, I think wheelchair boxing is limited. But yeah, I think those kind of innovative ideas are what people think to consider in order to make something not only more exciting, but definitely more complicated and involved. The homie Ricky says, then don't speak on it. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. War Speed got me rolling transgender boxing to Jack in the Box to fighting a gay black karate master. Haha. Well, you know what? He wasn't actually black, homie Ricky. I don't know. He was some kind of, I think, a Mexican. I think he was Mexican from the Distrito Federal, like deep Mexico. You know, those guys that give all kinds of, like, they call it carrilla, but it basically means like, uh, joshing around or peer pressure. Yeah, no, yeah. He was a black belt. He was a black belt. Um, and I was just a regular street fighter. Um, but that was it. Yeah, he was cool. He ended up being cool. He wasn't like one of those flamboyant gay guys or nothing like that. He was just a regular guy that looked regular, but he just liked men. And yeah, actually, in fact, he liked the black men. He liked black men. That was crazy. Uh, I remember one day he there was this big crazy Mexican guy that used to work there. He was very cool though. He was like, you know, boot wearing guy and everything like that. And this gay guy, this black guy comes in like a big tall black guy, big dark tall black guy, and I'm flipping the burgers and the other guy's making the fries, and he says, oh, something like, oh, daddy, or something like that. And we both look at it. What's he talking about? And then we look like what he's looking at, and we see a black guy, and we look at each other like, bro, come on, bro. Like, this guy was like so jungle fever, man. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous, man. I don't even know what I'm talking about. It's just uh, that guy basically, he was like the first gay guy I've ever met. And in fact, he's probably one of the only two that I met, maybe three. Okay. So the homie Ricky, I know you're still sick, man, but where are you, bro? I wanted to run some news ideas by you just to get your opinion, or even maybe some of our listeners' opinion, man. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we should just call it a night, cause I mean, here I am rambling all by myself. Uh, talking about wheelchair boxing and transgender boxing. gay guys into black guys. I think maybe this is above my pay grade and no longer boxing related. But nonetheless, guys, I just want to state that this weekend was an incredible one for boxing, especially if you love underdogs. And it doesn't end, guys. This week on Thursday, we're going to have Jose Sanchez versus Walter Santibanes on the zone. On Friday, Jake Paul versus Andre Augustus on the zone. On Saturday, Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez versus Sonny Edwards on the zone. On the zone again, Josh Kelly versus Placido Ramirez on the zone. Anybody get it? Okay. On Showtime, the last event of the year for them, and this is their farewell. David Morrell, the guy who everybody says he's the next guy up at 168, the guy who everybody says he'll beat David Benavidez, Andrade, Canelo, so forth and so on. David Morrell is going to be fighting Sena Agbeko. And then the week after that, we're going to be watching Anthony Joshua, Otto Wallin, Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker, all those incredible fighters, including Bivol. They're going to be fighting at one of the cheapest pay per view events with the most heavyweights and famous names in all of history at $40 in Saudi Arabia. God bless those Saudis for investing back into the sport and making it affordable for us to acquaint ourselves with some of the more accomplished, notable names out there. Incredible. Incredible. The homie Ricky seems to have hopped on. Homie Ricky, I've been holding up this show for a little while. We've been 2 hours and a half in. I know you only hopped in for 20 minutes at the intro and then you stepped off. Can you now contradict or refute or just point out anything that I mentioned up today as far as on the underdogs, the going ons in the sport, and what you think about what I stated? Am I ridiculous? Am I absolutely absurd? Do you think Divino Espinosa is on the juice? What are your
Yeah, no, nah, man. I thought you did a great job, bro. I will say this, man. Because they don't really drug test. I think the WBO, right? That's the title belt that Robeisy Ramirez had. They don't really do drug testing, man. And there was that amazing fight that Connor Ben had. The guy that failed a couple of drug tests himself, and he blamed protein eggs. He got into a really tough fight with a Mexican fighter himself. Turns out that the Mexican fighter failed the drug test. To my knowledge, they didn't really tell the fans what the substance is that he failed
hmm,
exactly. I remember reading the article in Boxing Scene. They just stated that he failed the drug test, but they never really followed up with it, or at least I didn't follow up with it. And maybe it was a ton of heart that Rafael Espinoza showed against Robeisy Ramirez. Maybe, just maybe, man, he might have ate that Oscar Valdez meat, bro. I'm not gonna discredit Hart, because there's guys like Roy Jones Jr. and Shane Mosley, all these guys that pop dirty for some type of steroids and shit. But I can't help to think like maybe he was on something because actually, let me put up some fights of Rafael Espinoza. If you watch a little bit of his fights in the past, and I think you kind of talked about it in your you kind of talked about excuse me. You kind of talked about it in the live where you had a lot of up and down resume of the fighters in terms of like what his past opponents look like. Bro, this dude looked slow. He did not look good. He did not look good. He didn't even look tough. And then all of a sudden, he's beating Robeisy Ramirez. Now, to be honest with you, Robeisy Ramirez isn't a great champion. Like, oh my God, this guy's pound for pound. Oh, he's got, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. chin. He's got Canelo skills. No. Robeisy Ramirez is a good fighter. Is a good fighter. But he's not anything special, right? In fact, there's not many Cuban special champions in the modern era. you know, that you're like, oh my God, this is the guy that you must see, you know, like, anyway. So Robeisy Ramirez, you know, he lost his professional debut and he got knocked out by some dude, right? And then he rematched said dude, and then he beat him by decision. I felt like they should have had a trilogy because I don't understand why favorite fighters or fighters that are supposed to win, you know, once they get beat on the rematch, they just walk away if victorious. Same thing with Anthony Joshua. I believe he still owes Andy Ruiz a third fight. But, you know, once he beats him, you know, by decision, oh, you know, that's it. I don't really understand it. Same thing happened with Floyd Mayweather and Marcos Maidana. I still felt there should have been a third fight because the first fight I had Marcos beating Maidana, Floyd. Floyd beat him in the second one, fine. But I was like, all right, you guys still haven't settled the score. Especially with AJ and Andy. I was like, Andy knocked him out. AJ outboxes Andy, who's partying off fucking night. And then what happened to the third fucking fight? You know, no disrespect to Otto Wallin. He's earned this fucking fight. But I'm like, I want to see Andy, bro. Anyway, so Robeisy Ramirez, I believe he should have still fought that guy that knocked him out in his professional debut. And then more than likely, this guy Rafael Espinoza is going to rematch Robeisy Ramirez instead of unifying with Luis Venado Lopez, right?
Wow.
And if Robeisy, well, that would be great. Like that's what I would like. But most likely, they're going to have a rematch. And
Hmm.
Robeisy might win, and if he does win, I guarantee you, no matter how great this fight is, they won't have a trilogy because you know he was a 22-1 underdog and he wasn't supposed to pull the upset. I
Yeah.
don't know why boxing they do that. You know what I mean? But anyway, hold on. Let me try to pull up some fights of the of Rafael Espinoza. And if you saw this, you would realize why he's a 22-1 underdog. It's not like he had Luis Alberto Lopez, you know, power or awkwardness, bro. This dude he's looked slow as molasses. He didn't even look like he had power. Obviously, he had a stellar 22 wins and 18 KOs, but like hold on.
As you look for that, homie Ricky, I just want to remind you who the champions are at 126.
Yeah,
For the
yeah.
WBC, we have Rey Vargas. For the IBF, we have Luis Lopez El Venado. And although the WBO has yet to update it, on boxing scene at least, Robeisy Ramirez is still up there as the champion when we know that 11th rank Rafael Espinosa is now the current champion. Now, homie Ricky, uh, 126 is vacant. And if I'm not mistaken, that's on account of Manuel Navarrete having vacated and nobody yet fighting for that. But allow me to ask you, homie Ricky, um, Manuel Navarrete, right? Emmanuel Navarrete. He fought. Let me see when he fought. I'm looking at the box rec right now. His last fight was with Robs. Oh no, actually, he fought Oscar Valdez at 130 also. And Liam Wilson, he vacated that at the beginning of this year, in February officially by having gone up to fight Liam Wilson. He has had 3 fights. Allow me to ask you, homie Ricky, why is it that the WBA is still vacant? We have names like Raymond Ford, Odebek Golmatov at first and second. We have Reya Abe, Mirko Coelho, Victor Morales, Luis Nunes, Stephen Fortin at 7, Dominic Francis 8, Anselmo Moreno, Ruben Viola at 10, Hopi Price at 11, Mauricio Lara at 12, Angelo Leo 13, Arnold Kagai, and Luis Ventura at 14 and 15 respectively. Why, homie Ricky, is 126 WBA still vacant?
Yeah, I'm not exactly too sure. I think they're probably hoping that Tank Davis drops down to 126 and picks up that belt, bro. Hold on, man.
Yeah,
My
yeah. I bet they
lagging
would
hella
love that,
slow.
wouldn't they?
Let me just close this shit.
Oh, well, so see, El Pachuco. While you're looking at that, homie Ricky, El Pachuco reports that if he's not mistaken, and I believe he may be right. I think I heard something like that. Uh, Virgil Ortiz is coming back at the first week of the new year, 2024, the year of our Lord, to fight at 150. Well, I guess that would be 160, right? Because once you surpass the limit of weight at 154, you are fighting as a middleweight at 160 instead
That's
of a
right.
junior. So he's fighting a middleweight instead of junior middleweight, at 156 for a catch weight. Now, we know what that means, homie Ricky. That is what you call a weight bully tactic.
Yeah, that's exactly the definition of it.
But here's the thing, though. I have heard uh, Oscar de la Hoya, or was it Bernard Hopkins, or maybe his trainer? Maybe it's his trainer. Maybe it's uh, uh, Garcia, Robert Garcia, who's now training Virgil Ortiz again. I think he's the one who was talking about making uh, uh, Virgil Ortiz a champion at 154 or 160. Maybe you know a little more about that, homie Ricky, but I believe that Oscar de la Hoya talked about 154. I believe Virgil Ortiz trainer talked about 160 or maybe even 168 in one video that I may have listened into. But it's just crazy how nobody seems to know what Virgil Ortiz's move is, but it definitely ain't 147, and it doesn't seem like it's gonna be 154.
Yeah, no, you're correct. In the YouTube page Little Giant Boxing, he was interviewing Robert Garcia, and they're first gonna test the waters. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna, fight in a catch weight in between, 154 and 160. But the idea is to become a champion at 154. Depending if he makes the weight safely or not, or how he feels, then they probably move up to 160. But I'm gonna say this with Virgil, man. There's a lot of fights for him, a lot of really good fights for him to fight at 154. For instance, once Errol Spence and Bud Crawford move up, there's those fights. There's a fight with Brian Castano, also Tim Su, even Sebastian Fundora. Those are all amazing fights for Virgil Ortiz. And the fact that he's like 23 years old, man, the sky's the limit. Is just, bro, you got to figure out what the fuck is this Rambosis situation that you're getting your muscles depleted. You got to come down and understand, like, bro, what's going on? Because when I look at Virgil, I don't really see where Robert Garcia and company, when they state, oh, Virgil Ortiz is a big guy. Like when I saw him fight versus Mean Machine looked bigger. He looked much more defined. You know, when I saw Virgil Ortiz versus that kid McKinson, I was like, you look too. You guys look on par. You look like a welterweight. I don't understand where he looks like a big 154. He didn't even look up. He didn't look like a big 147. Maybe I'm wrong. Obviously watching it from TV is completely different when sizing up a person in real life, but like he does not look big. um with that being said, I don't know if Virgil Ortiz is that great or big of a puncher to bang and fuck with the guys at 154 or at 160. Basically, because I'm saying like he's not that big of a guy. Like when you look at his back or his bicep, his shoulders, you don't really see like, oh man, that dude is built like Canelo. You know, Canelo at 147 when he fought Mosley, he looked huge, right? At 154 when he fought Erislandy Lara and he was picking up these guys, he looked big. Even when he fought Jermell Charlo at 168, Canelo looked like a monster. I don't see that with Virgil Ortiz's, body composition. I don't see that he has Manny Pacquiao calves, So I don't really understand this. But hey, hopefully he comes back and he, looks victorious. I hope next year that he at least fights 4 times a year. And even if Yamantas Stanionis gets it on with Keith Thurman, early January, at least that's what's speculated. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight at 154. Um, But yeah, when you hear elements that he's passing out and having to go to the hospital and his muscles are depleted, I don't really understand what's going on with Virgil Ortiz if he should be boxing at all. So I understand why this catch weight is happening. It's proper, but it's not. There's no belts on the line, so like I don't care if it's a catch weight or not. I just want to see if this kid can compete. I've seen guys get shot in the leg like Jose Benavides. I've seen other people have lacerations in their body or getting stabbed like Kell Brook, and they still come back. And, I don't know what it is with long COVID. I know people that have COVID, but like to me, it looks like a very strong, significant flu, depending obviously on your age, and your white blood cells, if you can recover much properly or not, that goes on age, health, and diet, and just like how good you take care of your body. But knowing that Virgil is a competing athlete, and he, channels good, brain muscle memory when he plays and teaches himself how to play the guitar and the piano. I don't understand how long COVID can really fuck him up. So it's just kind of like, I don't know, you've heard many times fighters compete under the flu. Sometimes they pull out. So I'm not saying the COVID is the flu, but it's like the flu-like symptoms, just a little much more extreme. But yeah,
Yeah,
no, I mean, I don't understand how long
I won't talk
COVID
about
can
that,
be
homie
that way.
Ricky. Yeah, I won't talk about COVID or nothing like that because I don't know anything about it. Um, but I do understand. So here's the thing, Pachuco. In Pachuco states, almost everyone is a weight bully. Everybody cuts weight. I just wanted to clarify one thing, El Pachuco. Making weight is not being a weight bully. That's just you know finding your body's natural, or better yet, not natural, because a lot of people tend to think that you're rolling out of bed weight is what's natural for you, even though everybody's body is different and the way that people live is different. But mostly when we say weight bully, we're not talking about somebody being taller and sucking down on weight, because that's not easy. That's not easy. Making weight only comes from blood, sweat, and tears. It doesn't come from sacrificing food and just starving yourself and then making weight, because then, of course, that's not going to promote uh, uh, health. It's going to make you weak. You're going to suffer a lot when it comes to your gray matter, your brain. And doesn't have anything to do with just dehydration. It has to do with proper nutrition, proper exercise, hard work, and naturally, by the output of your work, you're gonna start losing weight. You're gonna start eating unnecessary fat. You're gonna start only building proper muscles, and that just happens naturally by working out. Like for example, I always take as an example my nephew, who is 5'8". We started bringing him down weight through exercise and boxing. We were able to bring him down to 154 after he weighed 215 pounds. So, Pachuco, when I say that hard work is going to lead to you making weight to where you're going to be the most proficient and athletic version of yourself, it just happens because nobody fights by rolling out of bed, right? My nephew weighed 210 pounds, even though he was 5'8". That's actually called obese. If you go into the BMI index and you put in the weight for your height, there will give you levels of what your body mass index is, and it'll tell you whether you're fit, you're optimal, you're borderline overweight, you're overweight, or you're morbidly obese. And that is what they officially call obese and morbidly obese. So that meant that pretty short fella, once we started to get him out of the necessary carbs, working out and stuff like that, he started to lose the weight. He started to build muscle. He came down in weight to 154. I think once we brought him down to 150, and he still had room to go. Now, he's not a weight bully, because naturally, without any kind of exercise and just being a couch potato, he was morbidly obese. And even though at 150, 154, at 5'8", he was barely what they call below obese. Not morbidly obese, but he was below obese. He was at a natural, healthy BMI. Now, if he had dedicated a bit more, because he ended up doing other stuff, he ended up doing track and field and all kinds of different stuff. If he dedicated more to the sport, he would have shed more necessary weight, build more muscle. We probably would have brought him at 147 or something like that because of his bone density. He's a pretty big boned kid. But what I'm saying is that that's naturally what happens to a body once you dedicate yourself to a sport. Um, it's not starvation. It's not dehydration. It's proper nutrition and proper hard work. In fact, when I say a weight bully, I don't even call Espinosa, Rafael Espinosa, weight bully just because he was 6'1" and sucking down to 126. No, because he did not boil down to 126 off of dehydration and starvation alone. The reason he became that thin is because, well, for one, his musculature permits it, but also because he worked hard through diet and exercise to make that weight. And we know that is a good fighting weight for him to be competitive. And that's why we do it, to be competitive, because he ended up becoming a world champion, having fought an Olympian. So when we say weight bully, we talk about somebody that gives his word. He gives his palabra. And he says, we're going to fight at 126. And he puts his pen to paper and he puts his name right there and he gives his word legally bound. And he says, I'm going to make this weight. So the opponent says, I'm going to do that too because I'm a man of my word. And then, because everybody knows how hard it is to make weight because it's a lot of dedication and hard work, one guy decides to forfeit that, backtrack on his word. He chickens out on his palabra and he says, oh, you know what, guys? Well, I weighed 129. Take it or leave it. You're 124? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know you wanted to make weight. I'm at 129. Take it or leave it. That's a weight bully tactic, especially when the home fighter does it because they know that the promotion is going to force the fight. Because guess what? The other guy, he just worked out for all this. And if he doesn't take the fight, he's not going to get paid. Right? And another way to weight bully somebody is to bring him up in weight. Bring a smaller fighter up in weight. Like, for example, what Ryan Garcia did when he brought, what was his name, homie Ricky?
Oscar Duarte.
Oscar Duarte, 2 weight classes to officially fight at 147. Because that's what Ryan Garcia did. Oscar Duarte fights at 135. He never even fought at 140. Ryan Garcia forced him to skip right through 140 and fight at a catch weight of 143, which is officially fighting as a welterweight at 147. He brought that man up 2 weight classes, and that's another tactic of weight bully. Shakur Stevens, when he went up in weight 2.5 pounds against Robson Conceição, and he didn't even bother to make the weight again because he wasn't gonna defend the belts. He weight bullied Robson Conceição, and he said, well, take it or leave it. I'm 2 pounds different than you. I know it was hard for you to make it because you're older and you're taller. I know you are weaker because you had to work so hard to make that weight. But I took it a little easy and take it or leave it. Shakur Stevens is a weight bully because he gave his word and didn't live by it. And he used the relaxation and the less stress on the body to be more comfortable in his fighting style and his ability, while the other guy suffered and toiled a little harder than him and was weakened as a result of it. That's another weight bully tactic. But making weight and keeping your word, that's not weight bully. It has nothing to do with height or reach or nothing like that. It has to do with just working hard. So I just wanted to clear what I mean by that, Pachuco. Making weight or being tall or taller than the other guy or having a longer reach is not weight bully. That's just working hard. Oh, yeah. Shakur got a pass when he missed weight. And in fact, I'm telling you, that is a weight bully. Shakur Stevens was a scumbag for that. He knew the Brazilian had come from Brazil and he had no alternative. You either take that fight, believe in yourself, even though you're in New Jersey in the enemy's backyard, and if you don't take that fight, you go home without a belt and without pay. That's weight bully tactic. Ryan Garcia is a weight bully. Tank Davis has weight bullied people. And in fact, there's one thing I have to say. Jose Luis Garcia allowed himself to be weight bullied when he consented and the sanctioning bodies allowed him to fight at 135, even though he was a champion at 130, solely for the money. But when Leo Santa Cruz, when Tank Davis tried to A side and weight bully Leo Santa Cruz by bringing him up to 130, you said, "Oh, come up to 130, 135." Leo Santa Cruz says, "Nope. If you want to fight, I have the real belt. You, Tank Davis, have a baby belt. I want you to make weight at 130 if you want to fight me." And guess what? Leo Santa Cruz made 130. He forced Tank Davis to make 130, and Leo Santa Cruz's belt was officially in the line. And Tank Davis beat that boy for that belt and immediately let go of the real belt in order to go up to 135 to make defense of his baby belt. Tank Davis is a weight bully. So I just wanted to clear that up right there. Homie Ricky, sorry about that. I know I went wayward, but what say you?
Nah, man, those are really good examples. That's pretty much how you would characterize it. Tank. He's just learning from the greats, from the peers. Floyd more or less did that. So did when he fought Juan Manuel Marquez. I believe they fought at 144. Even though he was like 2 years or a year and a half retired from the sport, whatever the case may be. Same thing with Canelo. Canelo weight, making these fighters like Amir Khan move up to 155, and then he comes down and fights Liam Smith just to duck the smoke with Prime Triple G. Look, bro, like it happens. The thing is, at least Tank fought these guys at one, even though he made Leo Santa Cruz, move up in weight. At least they fought at 130, like a real OG weight class. Even though he made Hector Luis Garcia move up 5 pounds. At least they fought at least 135, which are actually real numbers, not like 136 where he fought Ryan Garcia. It's just like what? It's not, it's at least it's ridiculous, bro.
Yeah,
But
but you know
again,
what, homie
what
Ricky?
you have to
Any,
understand is this. Hold on. You gotta understand is this. These fighters sign off on it, man.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
like you
That's what I was
can't
gonna
be
get at.
making excuses. Now, what Shakur Stevenson did to Robson Conceição, right?
Mhm.
Where he strategically didn't make weight by 2 pounds on purpose because he was like, you know what, fuck
Mhm.
it. I'm already moving up. I don't care about this belt. They can strip me. That's some fuckery. That's like, okay. And he's announcing it to the world. At least he could have played to the cameras and be like, you know what? I tried and I forgot who fought like that. And then they rescheduled a bunch of times. But at least you're trying. Oh, like was it Zurdo? Or I don't remember who it was. I forgot exactly which fighter it was that rescheduled and then they moved up again. I think it might have been Zurdo. You know what I'm saying? Uh but yeah, man, it's pretty ridiculous, bro. Again, but these fighters and commissions, they sign off on it, and then they still go through with it because at the end of the day, if you don't fight, you get no money, and there's really no penalty because look what happened to Imanza Stanionis with Virgil Ortiz. They didn't even give him a fight replacement, and usually there's a fighter on standby just in case somebody gets hurt or there's a freak accident in the showers and they slip and bang their fucking head like it happened to one of those Mexican fighters that was gonna have a fight. Shit like that, tragic events happen. So Oscar kind of did Amansa Stanion is dirty. But anyway, man, we've been talking a lot about these topics of like weight bullyingism and Virgil Ortiz
Yeah,
and the comeback. Look, man, I'm happy that Virgil Ortiz is coming back. I'm excited to see
yeah.
how he looks.
Mhm.
And hopefully, he doesn't look too rusty and obviously just in good health, man. I know this is
Yeah,
his dream and I know this is his passion to become a boxer. And I'm not here to shit all over it. So I'm excited. I'm a Virgil Ortiz fan, and hopefully he gets back to the ring as soon as possible and he has an amazing run this year.
yeah.
Um, I wanted to say this, bro. El Pachuco goes, Pro Box TV Espanol is going to have an auction on their Wednesday show for boxing gloves signed by Juan Manuel Marquez, Jorge Arce,
Wow.
and
and
Marco Antonio
Antonio
Barrera.
Barrera.
Wow, that's fucking
Wow.
dope, man. Thanks for the tune. Yeah, I'm a whatever it is. He said an auction, so they're gonna be for sale. Um, yeah, fuck that.
I know you're gonna bet something. You're gonna put something in. I know it.
Well, luckily for me, right, or for us, we have Chris Bird and Shane Mosley signed gloves.
Yeah.
Um, but Juan Manuel Marquez is my favorite fighter. So,
Mhm.
uh, damn, that's pretty fucking epic, man. That's really cool. That's really cool.
You know, homie Ricky. Before we hop on to other things, I just wanted to mention, just because we're talking about Virgil Ortiz, before we hop on, um, so when you said something about fighting at a weight class that's a legitimate weight class, accepted and recognized weight class. The only reason those weight classes are what they are, it's not necessarily because there's any rhyme or reason behind them. It's mostly because men and women agree that they're going to make weight at that weight class under those restrictions. But there really is no rhyme or reason, homie Ricky. I mean, boxing starts like at 102 pounds. Then it goes to 104. Then it goes to 108. Then it goes to 112. Then it goes to 160. Then it goes to 118, from 12 to 18, and then to 126, and then to 130, and then to 135, and then to 140, and then to 147. And what you're looking at, the homie Ricky, is that the weight classes go up almost like you're reading out pi numbers, the order of pi: 3, 1, 4, 7, so forth and so on. It's not like it's going in some kind of an expected, reasonable weight class. I mean, look, you go from 130 to 135, that's 5 pounds. From 135 to 140, that's 5 pounds. From 140 to 147, 7 pounds. From 147 to 156, 8 pounds.
I get it.
From
So
one,
what's your
okay,
point?
so there really is no. What I'm trying to say at is any number is suitable as long as the fighters agree beforehand. Like, for example, I know that I said that it's a weight bully tactic for Virgil Ortiz to fight at 156, but it's not necessarily a weight bully tactic. It's just that he's employing. It's just a tactic that is used by weight bullies. But here's the thing, though: if
No,
if
no,
Virgil
I get it.
Ortiz,
I get
what
it.
up? If Virgil Ortiz is telling his opponent beforehand, we're gonna fight at 156, that means his opponent is informed well ahead of time in order to prepare for that weight class. That is not a weight bully tactic, and there's still enough time to acclimate. This is not a last minute opponent who is being told a last minute that they're fluctuating the weight from an agreed upon weight on paper. He's telling him this is where we're going to fight. So this is not a weight bully. I just wanted to make sure we understood it's just a weight bully tactic. That is not necessarily a tactic that Virgil Ortiz is using at the moment, as much as just acclimating himself back into the sport. But most importantly, homie Ricky, this is what I wanted to ask you. If you don't know this, Virgil Ortiz is coming back into, I guess, 160, because if it really takes place at 156, it's 160, to take on a 12 round fight. Now, homie Ricky, correct me if I'm wrong, but 12-round fights are in preparation for a championship fight afterwards. Now, if you know anything about Virgil Ortiz and his next opponent, uh, the opponent that he's taking on is a fighter that you've probably never heard of, right? He's taking on, and in fact, even Virgil Ortiz Jr. and his pro box, they don't even mention the fighter's name just yet. They still have Michael McKinson as the fighter who's going to be taking on. But Virgil Ortiz is going to be fighting a fighter by the name of Frederick Lawson, who is a 147-pound fighter in a 12-round main event on the zone. Now, homie Ricky, I ask you, first off, what do you know about Frederick Lawson? And secondly, why is Virgil Ortiz having a fight for 12 rounds?
Um, yeah, man. I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, 12 rounds. It already shows that it's from some type of title contending. You know,
Hmm.
whether it's at 154 or 160. If it's at 154, I believe that's going to be a vacated belt unless Charlo has it. Because I think Tim still has a WBO and the other ones are going to get scattered. And then if it's at middleweight, I think I doubt he's going to fight Zanibek Alimkhanuly. So I don't know, man, but that's pretty interesting. But yeah, no, it's a very good point. The way you differentiate, an agreement between two men fighting at a respective catch weight. It's not weight bullying. It would be weight bullying if you know Virgil don't come in at 156 and then he moves to 160 and be like, oh, you know what, I can't make that weight. Just move it up to 164. Well, what was the fighter that did that, bro? It just happened recently, man. Um, oh, fucking Jamal Charlo, bro. He was
Yeah.
supposed to fight initially at 160. Can't make the weight, so they changed it up to 162. Can't make that. He comes in out, they reschedule it to
Wow.
164, and then the fucker shows up 166.7 pounds. And then Jose Benavidez still agrees to that shit.
Yeah. He
Listen,
sold his booty, bro. He sold his
bro, that's
booty.
crazy, bro. Like at the end of the day, if I'm Jose Benavidez, and we talked about this when the shit happened, I was like, bro, like give me somebody else. This dude's coming in 7 pounds overweight. Like how much Oh, I don't know, bro. That was some crazy stuff, man. But yeah, dude, that's like the ultimate. And I know same thing with Virgil and same thing with Jamal. They're just trying to get back into the flow of things and acclimated into boxing and weight cutting and stuff like that. But at the same time, you know, where does that leave Jose Benavidez Jr.? He fucking wants to get paid. You've been talking a gang of shit, back and forth. What does that leave Frederick Lawson? If you can't, if Virgil comes in and they reschedule it to 158, and then he's like, oh, I can't make 158. I'm gonna fucking pass out. My skin is turning yellow. I'm pissing out blood. Like, what are you gonna move it up to 164? Just sometimes, bro, it's like you can't fight at your scheduled weight. Sometimes you just gotta retire from the sport and find something else to do.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair. We like our stars, but we gotta be equal to the
Yeah.
journeyman as well. Like, how many times when we look at the Gabriel Satos of the world, the Derek Chisoras, not only do we know they're going to get shafted in the scorecards, but how much like they fucking got a life too, and they gave us good fucking fights while ducking nobody.
Yeah.
Um, excuse me. Anyway, yeah, bro, I just want to kind of get that off my chest. But
Yeah.
man,
You know what?
well, Devin Haney, bro, just let's talk about other guys. And we talked about Devin
Yeah.
Haney.
You know what, homie Ricky?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
I have good news. I have good news. I have good news to report to you in a clarification for our dear listener, El Pachuco. As reported just 3 days ago, El Pachuco, by Mr. Dan Ambrose, a very legitimate and renowned sports pundit and writer. He writes on Boxing News 24 that Virgil Ortiz Jr. will be fighting Frederick Lawson January 6th uh, at 154. So Virgil Ortiz is not going to be fighting in the catchweight. It will be officially his debut at 154 and
Nice.
agreed upon. Yep, yep, yep. And here's the thing, though. Frederick Lawson is a 147-pound fighter. So guess what, homie Ricky? Both of them are going up. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? So both. This is not just to clarify, because I didn't want to accuse Virgil Ortiz of being weight bullied. Once I saw that catch weight and stuff like that, and I knew that it was a 12 rounder, it didn't make sense why a catch weight would be for 12 rounds, even though, guess what? Charlo just did it a couple of weeks ago. But nonetheless, I'm proud to say for both of these fighters that both of them are moving up. Therefore, it's a very competitive and fair equities fight. That we can just hope the better man comes up on top. I hope Virgil Ortiz comes back, feels healthy at 154, and I hope that Frederick Lawson, a fighter that I don't think I've ever heard about, can give a good account of himself. And who knows, homie Ricky? Who knows? As much as I love Virgil Ortiz Jr., what if, just what if, the incredible year that we've been having continues on to the next year. And on January 6th, Frederick Lawson leaves us with our jaw agape because he pulled off a stunner against a fighter and Virgil Ortiz who thought Rambo diabosis or whatever you call that was going to be neutralized at 154 when in reality it took such a toll on him combined with the long COVID that he probably should be fighting at 160 instead. I don't know, homie Ricky. This year has been full of surprises, and I'm not discounting any fighter right now. There's just so many going on right now that just surprises, and it's admirable. It's exciting and admirable.
Yeah, no, it's I concur, bro. This year has been great, and it looks like next year will be really good. I wanna talk about something, man. It's not
Wow! Look, oh man! Just last thing, homie Ricky.
fuck
El
guy.
Pachuco states, I'm sorry, El Pachuco states that Virtual T said it was a catchphrase in a recent interview. Man, we're going to have to find out until the very last day of the fight, homie Ricky. We'll see what happens because, I mean, there's so much going on. We're not too sure. I mean, it sounds like some of these writers are maybe writing these reports in haste without really confirming, but you have to take it from the horse's mouth, right? And in this case, Virgil Ortiz is the horse. And if he said in an interview, there's going to be a catch weight. I think I'm going to believe that guy more so than Mr. Ambrose.
Look, man, I don't care about any of that shit, bro. To be honest with you, I just want to see fight. But no. On a serious note, man.
Yep.
I want to switch the topic up a little bit, bro, because we saw this man fight in Oakland, California, and his name is Andre Ward. And for
Uh,
some reason, that guy is fucking always hating on Canelo, bro. Always hating on Canelo. So he came out recently saying, "Ah, man, if I was still active, he would never fight me." Okay. Now I like Andre Ward. I thought Kovalev beat him the fuck up in the first fight, and then Kovalev didn't do a good job of protecting himself in the second fight. Is a nice way to put it. But anyway, Andre Ward was that dude at 168. He won the super, I don't know, the Sweet Eight or the Sweet 16, fight when he fought like Carl Froch and George
Super
Groves
Six.
and Arthur Abraham and all these guys like Sakio Bika. He was the guy at 168. You know,
Super Six tournament.
yeah, who cares? You know what I'm saying? Like, who gives a fuck? So he won this tournament, but he never became undisputed at 168. And he goes up to 175, and he beats Sergey the Crusher Kovalev. He didn't beat him the first fight, by the way. And because he didn't beat him the first fight, and politics wanted Andre Ward to be the face of boxing, they gave him the victory, robbed Kovalev, or Kovalev should have just not, like, he gave his mandatory a chance, Andre Ward, and beat him, knocked him down. But they robbed Kovalev, and there was a rematch, and then he knocked out Kovalev, whatever's. So I bring all this because this guy keeps hating on, Canelo Alvarez. And I feel that Andre Ward, if he feels this kind of way, just come out of retirement, bro. Just come out of retirement and fight Canelo. Don't just talk about it, bro. You're 38 years old or you're 36 years old. You didn't take much punishment into the sport of boxing. Let's see if you can fuck up Canelo. Instead of Terrence Crawford having to move up 21 pounds, instead of you coaching Caleb Plant, and showing him the quote unquote blueprint to beat Canelo, come out of retirement and you fight Canelo. It's fucking simple. I'm sure Canelo will fuck you up. You have been out of the ring for 7 years, come and fight him. You wrote a documentary that probably nobody fucking gives a fuck about or watched, and ain't nobody bought your buck. Now, I might likely buy his buck because I like Andre Ward. He's from the Bay. And, he's got a good story. But if you feel a type of way, come and fight Canelo. You never were undisputed. Go fight a pound for pound. If you're that dude, right, who dug Dimitri Bivol, who saw him fight, and spar and train, but ducked him, and you ducked Adonis Stevenson, who had the WBC, and you didn't fight Alexander Vozdik or Artur Beterbiev, but if you somehow say that Canelo ain't shit and he will never fight you, will come out of retirement, bro, and fight him. You know what I'm saying? I don't understand how Canelo never mentions Andre Ward's name. And yes, some dude like Andre Ward can have some type of resentment or backhanded compliments and shit all over Canelo. Like it's the fucking funniest thing, you know. Here comes when it comes down to Andre Ward. Have you heard those comments? Do you know about the situation? Like what are your
Yeah, he's
thoughts
been saying that for years.
about right? He's been saying it for years, and it doesn't give him any valid like. No one cares about his opinion. You know what I mean? And we're just talking about it just because we're shooting the shit, but it's like, bro, just come out in retirement and fight him. You know, like 6 years, 7 years, and he cleansed himself out of competing. He's still like sparring fighters. He still goes to the Virgil Hunter gym and coaches and hits the bag. So he's somewhat in good condition. Come and fight Canelo, bro. You're 6'2", Canelo's 5'7". You're got a 74 arm length. Canelo has 67 or 70. Like you have all the advantages, And this guy, bro, like Andre Ward is like Mr. Cap-a-lot, bro. He just talks a lot of shit and never backs it up. He also said that he would move up to heavyweight and fight Anthony Joshua. Bro, it's just like, are you afraid that you're forgotten? That everything that you try to do, Canelo did, but much greater? You know what I'm saying? His run at 168, Canelo's run at 168, it's impeccable, bro. It was great. 4 fucking fights, pretty much knocking out every undefeated champion, then moving up and knocking out the Crusher. He fought Bivol. Canelo did all the things that we wanted Andre Ward to do, right? Like, Carl Froch is a good fighter, but Canelo will knock that dude out. Not just outbox him, he would knock him out. You know what I'm saying? Sakio Bika, bro, that's like a Steve Forbes fighter. Canelo beats that dude. Edwin Rodriguez, these guys are big ass fuck, you know what I'm saying? But Canelo knocks these dudes out, bro. So, like, I don't understand how Andre Ward can, bad mouth Canelo this, like, past 10 years and then not have the inclination to call him out. It's like you're saying everything, but let's fight. Like Devin Haney says. You're saying everything, but let's fight. Bro, just fight Canelo Alvarez. But you see, Andre Ward won't. Because he's going to be like, look, I'm retired, bro. So is Manny Pacquiao. So is, and he's still talking about a Tank Davis fight. So is Floyd Mayweather, but he's still having an exhibition match. Have an exhibition fight with Canelo, bro. Canelo, I'm sure, would fight you at 175. And I doubt that Andre Ward is over 220 pounds. You know what I'm saying?
Homie Ricky, I completely disagree with you.
You don't think so?
No. Look, Andre Ward should shut his mouth up.
He should have an opinion.
The sport, no, that's fine. But his opinion is biased, and it's always negative, and it's always focused towards one individual exclusively. And whatever he says, anything in favor of anybody, it's always going to be. And I'm trying not to sound racist here. Get racial, I mean, but it's always a pro-black thing. He's in favor of every pro-black fighter.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is this, homie Ricky. He is a biased individual. He can speak everything he wants, but once you understand that he's a biased individual, he becomes discredited. As a pundit,
who cares if he's biased? I don't care that he sides with his people.
No, that's not what I'm saying, though.
With ours. I don't give a fuck. I'm just saying, bro, if you feel that type of way, just come out and fight.
But that's where I disagree with you the most, though.
Demetrius Andre to beat Canelo. I don't care if he's going to side with David Morrell or David Benavidez or any person that's black over Canelo. I don't give a fuck.
No, but
Carlo, that's fine. I'm just saying, come out of retirement and fight Canelo. Try to fight for his marbles. And if you're
that's what I disagree with you the most, though. I don't want this guy who's retired, who hasn't been competitive in years, to all of a sudden just get an opportunity to fight for millions of dollars against a man who doesn't need to fight him for any kind of respect or credit. I'm not willing to pay for that. I'm not willing to entertain a notion of a frivolous and necessary and pointless fight just because somebody opens up their mouth. As simple as that. There's going to be a million people that will open up their mouth if something like that was to take place.
Hold on.
Listen,
Is it fair
Andre
to
Ward,
say? Is it fair to say that Canelo owes us no more big fights? Like, sure, he
eh,
can rematch Bill.
homie Ricky,
Hold
Canelo
on, hold
owes
on.
us.
He can fight his David Benavides. He can fight Artur Beterbiev. You know, he can make Terrence Crawford move up, and those are all great fucking fights. Like, I'm interested. But we could say at this point, right, whether David were to beat Canelo or whether Bivol were to beat Canelo, I mean, Canelo is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Everything that he did to right now and then what he's going to do afterwards is not going to diminish any of his greatness. So, like, he can literally fight Jake Paul and no one's like, who cares? So Canelo has earned the right. But if a guy has so much disdain and animosity and is frivolous, you know, like very nitpicky, and you know, on a career of Canelo, like Andre Ward, right? Because Bud Crawford don't shit on Canelo Alvarez, like on his resume or his accomplishments. Neither does David Benavides. Neither does Jermell Charlo or all these guys. None of them shit on Canelo, right? But there's only one guy that shits on Canelo's Alvarez's trajectory of his career, and that's Andre Ward. He's the only one that talks bad about it in terms of, you know, pugilists. So like, why not? Out of all the fights, bro, out of all the fights, you know, if Andre Ward feels the type of way, like we know why Bud Crawford will move up to 168 because you know it's significant for his career. He can become a three-time, you know, undisputed champion. He would move up and knock out the number one, you know, pound for pound fighter. Like that's a great storyline, you know. But what does Canelo gain? Nothing. Canelo just knocked out, or sorry, or
Yeah,
just convincingly Jermell Charlo, another undisputed fighter, and no one gave him the credit for beating an undisputed. What would be the difference in fighting Bud Crawford?
exactly.
Nothing. So that
Exactly.
eliminates Bud
So,
Crawford.
homie Ricky,
Hold on. His mandatory and David Benavides, that's significant because really Canelo don't really fight mandatories. Never has and not really like well he doesn't really, you know. If we look at so there's that David Benavides where he's a real threat. Um Jamal Charlo, nobody care about that. Bivol, honestly, I don't really care for it. You know, if Canelo
Canelo
moves
cares
down
for
to
it.
168, you know, oh, he's trained. If Canelo fights him at 175, Bib, it's the same story. And then so honestly, like there's nothing left for Canelo to do other than have like exhibition matches with like Andre Wards of the world. You know what I mean? Or maybe fucking move up to Bridgerweight and fight you know, the Ripper, Badu Jack or
Mhm.
Makabu or whatever the case may be. Like there's honestly nothing left. Like
Look, homie Ricky, Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan owes nothing to the sport. If Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan retires today, uh, he would probably do the right thing by the sport. Why? Because everybody's waiting for Canelo for a handout. Everybody decides to find their nuts only when it means fighting that guy. But when it means fighting each other, the last name not being Alvarez, Barragan, they don't find their nuts. Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan
yo, you're
is a
gonna
shoe in
hold it
Hall of
down,
Famer.
bro. I'm gonna wrap up over here.
Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan, homie Ricky, is a shoe in Hall of Famer who is fourth weight division champion, undisputed. He's beaten some of the most champions and a lot of them undefeated in modern history. He's amassed wealth, and there's always going to be a next Johnny come lately who people want to see him fight because that guy's the guy who has the formula to beat Canelo. Guess what? Canelo has had a formula to how to defeat him on a few prior occasions. Bivol has a formula. Mayweather had a formula. Um, Miguel Cotto almost had a formula. Triple G almost had a formula. So, but nonetheless, Canelo Alvarez, he overcame. And win or lose, he fought all the names that were there. Yeah, there was a couple of funny fights here and there, but once he moved promotions and he became his own man and he was able to shape his destiny more, he fought the names that nobody would even dare fight between themselves. And he fought them all, and he did it in breakneck speed, and he does not owe anybody anything to the sport. Do I want to see Benavides fight Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan? Yes. But guess what? David Benavides got his belts on vacancies. And to this date, he has only fought Canelo's leftovers and guys that have never accomplished anything besides also getting belts on vacancies, like Demetrius Andrade. Now, this is not to discredit David Mexican Monster Benavides. All I'm trying to say is Canelo has beaten better champions than that guy. And if he retires right now, there's going to be a couple of people saying, oh, he retired because of David Benavides. But guess what? Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan owes nothing to the sport. He doesn't need to prove anything more to the sport. And in fact, one of the best things that can happen in the sport of boxing is that Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan retires so that men can stop saying his name and expecting a handout and so they can fight each other. That's what I have to say about that, homie Ricky. Do I still want to watch David Benavides fight Canelo Alvarez? Absolutely, because I'm a fan of Canelo. And in fact, I'm becoming a fan of David Benavides also. And just to wrap it up for me, Ricky, I know that right around now you started closing shop. El Pachuco says, I hope to see Virgil Ortiz Jr. fight Crawford at 154 because El Pachuco writes that he hopes Virgil gets a title shot at 154 before moving up to 160 and above. And I asked him, uh, who would you like to see Ortiz against at 154 for the belts? Because recall that Jamel Charlo still holds three belts, only having vacated the WBC for having gone up in weight to fight uh, Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan, but otherwise he still has three belts. But we don't know if he's ever going to come down to 154 again because he fought Canelo at 160 something. Um, and there's I threw in a couple of names out there: Tim Sue, Sander Sayas, Mendoza, the guy who beat Fandora, maybe Fandora, Charlo if he ever comes down. And I didn't throw in Terence Crawford because, well, Terence Crawford is a threat. It's the biggest threat at 147, and we're not too sure if he's going to fight at 154 for that rematch with Spence. But I would say that once he goes in there, he's the threat over Sander Sayas, Tim Sue, Mendoza, Jamel Charlo. Uh, I really do think that once he comes up there, it's gonna be one of those fights that that there's no way that you're not gonna say that if anybody's gonna start clearing the division, likely it's gonna be Terence Crawford. But he brought up Terence Crawford, and I was just left aghast, like what? Like not even warm up against Sander Sayas or Brian Mendoza or Sebastian Fedora. No, nothing like that, right? He just wants to go right at 154 for Terence Crawford once he goes up there at that weight class. And Pachuco says, yeah, man, Virgil was ready for Crawford at 147 before he started experiencing health problems. Now, that is true. That is true. Uh, Virgil Ortiz was the next guy up to fight for one of Terence Bud Crawford's belt. But for whatever reason or another, Golden Boy just continued to put him up against, these other fighters, Michael McKinson, and he tried to set him up against what was it, Nordic fella, Stanionis. Uh, So it's one of those things where he's like, they didn't really trust Virgil Ortiz to fight Terrence Crawford at the moment, or at least his promoter really wasn't setting it up, because he set him up against Kavaliauskas, McKinson, Maurice Hooker, and Sammy Vargas. Great names, by the way. If you look at it, Mauricio Herrera, he knocked him out. Nobody's ever done that to that guy. Remember, Mauricio Herrera's the guy who embarrassed Danny Garcia. But if you start looking at the fighters, Sammy Vargas, Maurice Hooker, Aegis Kavaliauskas, guess what? Kavaliauskas was one of the fighters that, if I'm not mistaken, he fought Terence Crawford. So they're already starting to put him up against fighters that they can cross reference and say, hey, you fought that guy, you fought that guy, who did it better? And then, of course, from there, instead of taking on Terence Crawford or mandating it or requesting it, he fought Michael McKinson, who was undefeated at the moment at 22-0. Um, I do believe that there was a fever pitch developing El Pachuco for Virgil Ortiz Jr. to fight Terence Bud Crawford. But I think that Golden Boy was trying to build up the fight by setting Virgil Ortiz against some fighters that they can say that they could cross reference uh, those fights in order to build up a hype. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think Maurice Hooker was also in that camp with Terence Crawford, or one of his stable partners. So I think it's one of those things where they were building it up, but unfortunately, like you stated, the random myellosis, his health conditions, and the long COVID, which is something that a lot of people have brought up, coupled with the fact that Golden Boy was probably a little reluctant on putting up their upcoming welterweight against that fighter. Maybe that's what barred it. So yeah, who knows? I wouldn't mind watching Ortiz fight Terence Crawford, but not immediately. Or maybe that's the best time, right? When both of them don't have the experience at 154 to take on those fights, because that's what happened with uh, Errol the Trude Spence Jr. He should have likely fought Terence Crawford when he arrived at 147 before Terence Crawford became acclimated at that weight class, because that's probably when Errol the True Dispense may have been more competitive. But he allowed the other guy to get acclimated and experience that fighting at 147, and that was to his downfall, along with the fact that he did not live a fighter's lifestyle. So maybe you're right, Pachuco, Crawford, Ortiz at 154, and then see where he goes from there. But there is a lot of smoke at 154. Likely Errol Spence, Jesus Ramos, Erickson Lubin, Sebastian Fedora, Israel Madrimov, Mendoza. There's also Xander Sayas, uh, Jack Case, another mover and a shaker. Vito Mielnicki just had a fight on the last pay-per-view event. He looked good, so that's a good one. There's Michel Sorro. I mean, that's another very tough, experienced fighter. That if you can get over him, yeah, that says you're probably ready for the next step up. There's the Takashi Inoue, another tough, durable fighter. There's a lot of work, guys. Tim Sue. There's a lot of smoke out there for Virgil Ortiz if he wants it before he takes on a killer like Terence Crawford. But then again, Virgil Ortiz is a knockout artist. If I'm not mistaken, Virgil Ortiz has uh, what, all wins by knockout? Maybe. I mean, yep, yeah, 19 wins, 19 knockouts. Wow, that's crazy. 100% knockout ratio. So there it is. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in a man's life where it gets too dark for him to continue on. The night has set heavy on me today. And I've done a little bit of talking in 3.5 hours of boxing talk, all things life. Thank you for allowing me to digress and talk about my experiences as a gas huffing punk rocker who avoided the smoke against a gay guy because I wasn't gonna live with myself having getting my ass beat and handed to me by a gay guy. Talked boxing, we talked upsets, we talked weight bullyism, we talked weight cutting, we talked about the future of the sport. We talked about how great this year has been so far and how it's wrapping up to be an incredible finale. If I'm not mistaken, I think Naoya Inoue is still gonna fight for the undisputed uh, shot at 122 coming soon enough. And if I'm not mistaken, it is this year versus Tapales. Uh, Marlon Tapales. Let's see when that fight takes place. December 26th, 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, this year cannot get any better. I've said it before, and I'm likely going to say it again. We are living in the golden days of boxing. And it's bittersweet if you think about it. As all these promotions are closing their doors, all these broadcasters are turning their back on the sport. Showtime, after nearly 40 years, walked away from the sport. After the PBC goes on and leaves 150 fighters without knowing what their future will be, likely retired and long laid off, they are moving to a broadcaster with nary any experience in sports, Amazon Prime. When all these crazy drastic changes to the sport are happening, subjecting our beloved organized violence to what many perceive to be a sure and promised slow death, while all of that is taking place, this year has developed into one of the greatest boxing years in recent decades. And I do say decades. I harken back to 2013, 2012. Last year was incredible also. But these are the golden days, guys. Whenever you can, support your local fighter, start there. Whenever you can, go into the gym. I encourage you. Go into the gym, punch the bag, train a week for free. Most gyms allow that. And give it 100% with all of the men and women punching the bags there. And then make the most fit, the most lean fighting machine that you can be, and then you'll appreciate the sport a little better. Support your local fighters, become a fighter yourself if you can. Sponsor the fighters that are giving it their all and fighting the worthwhile fights. And turn your back whenever you can on those frivolous exhibition bouts that they present to us for the highest pay-per-view price. No more watching fights just because everybody sells them to us as an important event when we know otherwise. And sponsor the fights that are meaningful for the fighters that are moving, like to care about the sport and their legacy and the entertainment of the fans. Ladies and gentlemen, it is up to you and I to enjoy these moments, to appreciate what these men and women do for our entertainment, because a lot of people think our sport is slowly dying. They may be true. Their opinions may have some substance to them. But if it's up to us to savage the sport, we have to do that. I thank you very much for your time. I thank the homie Ricky for having allowed me to cook for so long. I thank Mr. Vince Vargas, a beloved listener of ours. I love that man. I love having him hop on. Quan Chi, I know you may have hopped off a long time ago, but always a pleasure. Thank you for coming by, sir. Please do that again. Mr. Adam Hurley, I know you've hopped off, but it's always a pleasure having you by. Please come back again. The homie Ricky, again to you, I thank you. El Pachuco. Ta-na-na-na-na, ta-na-ta-ta-na, ta-na-na-na-na, ta-na-ta-ta-ta. You are a very astute, intelligent boxing fan. We need more people like you, sir. Welcome aboard the SSS Enterprise. And I do thank you once again for being here. Good night, farewell, and live long and prosper.